Part 1. I once dreamed of seeing Earth from afar, but now I only wish I would never leave it again. 3 months ago, I was Lieutenant Alexander Reed, 37, an aerospace expert and a member of Project Artemis, Mission 10. A top-secret mission to establish the first permanent research base in the area known as the Dead Zone on the Moon. Following the success of previous Artemis missions, we were tasked with exploring a dark region at the Moon's south pole, where telescopes had detected unexplainable anomalies. Our team consisted of 6 people: Commander Marcus Chen, biologist Alina Volkov, telecommunications engineer Julian Rodriguez, geologist Sarah Connor, robotics specialist Dmitry Ivanov, and me, in charge of life support systems. The final briefing before launch took place in a soundproof room at the Kennedy Space Center. Project Director Dr. Pierce, a gaunt man with a stern face and eyes perpetually bloodshot from lack of sleep, stood before us with 2 senior security personnel. "You have been thoroughly trained for this mission," he said, his voice dropping strangely. "But there is one aspect of the mission we can only reveal now." Dr. Pierce motioned to one of the security personnel. The man opened a titanium briefcase and retrieved 6 folders stamped with a bright red top-secret seal. "These are supplementary rules for your mission," he said, as they handed out the documents. "You must strictly adhere to these rules, no exceptions, and do not discuss them outside your team." I took the folder, feeling its unusual weight. The cover simply read, "Artemis Mission 10 Survival Rules." I flipped to the first page and found a handwritten message. "If you are reading this page, you have been selected for a special mission. Your top priority is to return alive. To do so, you must follow every rule below. No questions, no exceptions." What followed was a list of 11 rules. 11 bizarre rules that we were to follow on the Moon. Rule number 1, always maintain communication with Earth. If communication is lost for more than 12 hours, consider the mission failed, activate Omega Protocol, and prepare to depart immediately. Rule number 2, never, under any circumstances, go outside alone. Always maintain direct contact with at least one other team member. If contact is lost, return to base immediately. Rule number 3. If there is a knocking sound from outside the base, do not open the door, do not look out the window, turn off all lights, and wait exactly 15 minutes, no more, no less. Rule number 4. If at any time you see a blue light reflecting on the lunar surface, mark its location on the map, but do not approach it, do not take photos, do not record video. Rule number 5. If the internal communication system broadcasts the voice of a deceased person or someone not present in the base, disconnect immediately and change frequencies every 6 hours. Rule number 6. If you wake up and find the clocks in the base showing different times, trust the clock showing the latest time, synchronize all clocks to that time, and report to Houston. Rule number 7. You are not allowed to sleep for more than 4 consecutive hours. At least 2 people must always be awake. The awake person must check on all other team members every 15 minutes. Rule number 8. If you see a team member standing motionless, staring intently at the lunar surface for more than 10 minutes, unresponsive to their name being called, quarantine them and report to all other team members. Rule number 9. If any equipment automatically emits sound without being activated, turn it off immediately and do not use it again for at least 24 hours. Rule number 10. Each team member must check the soles of their boots after every walk on the lunar surface. If you see black, mud-like material, destroy the boots immediately and quarantine yourself for 4 to 8 hours. Rule number 11. If you see a non-human structure on the lunar surface, do not report it over public communication channels, use Alpha Proxima 9 code, and wait for instructions. Under no circumstances, touch the structure. As I read, a chill ran down my spine. Commander Chen was the first to speak, his voice still calm but slightly stiffer than usual. "Dr. Pierce, why weren't these rules mentioned during training? Some of these sound like something out of a horror movie." Dr. Pierce did not look us in the eye as he replied. "These rules are derived from the experiences of previous missions. Some may seem strange, but they all have a scientific reason behind them." "Which previous missions?" The geologist asked, skepticism clear on her face. "According to official records, we are the first to set foot on the Moon's south pole." Dr. Pierce raised an eyebrow. According to official records, yes. The conversation halted in a heavy silence, Dr. Pierce's eyes moving from one person to another. This is top secret information. Discussing it outside this room will be considered treason. And trust me when I say that going to the moon without this information would be much worse. One more thing, he said, his voice turning hoarse. Among the 6 of you, perhaps only one will return, but that is still better than none at all. We all remained silent, unsure what to say. Dr. Pierce motioned for the security personnel to leave the room, then locked the door. Dead zone, he whispered. It's not a random name. There's something there, something we don't understand. All we know is that these rules, if strictly followed, might allow some to survive. 3 days later, we left Earth aboard the SpaceX Super Orion rocket. As the ship passed through the atmosphere, I looked out the window and saw Earth gradually shrinking, looking like a fragile blue marble. Turning my head forward, I saw the moon, our target, growing larger. Its gray, cratered surface looked like a grim promise. In my spacesuit pocket was a miniature copy of the rules list, printed on indestructible material. I tried to convince myself that these rules were just overly cautious precautions, that nothing truly terrifying awaited us on the lunar surface. But looking into the eyes of my teammates, I could see that none of us truly believed that. A few hours later, our cockpit vibrated as the comms system crackled with a short message from Mission Control. Artemis, Mission 10, this is Houston. We have just received data from reconnaissance satellites detecting a thermal anomaly at your intended landing site. It appears someone was there before you. I turned to look at Commander Chen. He frowned at the control panel. Houston, he replied after a long pause. This is Artemis, Mission 10. Please reconfirm the information. You previously stated this area was uninhabited. The silence stretched, filled only by static. Finally, a different voice, not the one we usually communicated with, came on. Artemis, Mission 10, proceed with the mission as planned. Adhere to the rules list. Good luck. The connection cut abruptly, leaving us in the profound silence of space. At that moment, I didn't realize that this would be our last communication with Earth, at least with real people from Earth. None of us knew that only one person would return from this mission, and that person would no longer be human. Part 2. Landing on the moon was already an incredibly complex engineering challenge. Landing on the moon knowing that something was waiting for you, that was any astronaut's worst nightmare. Our landing module, named Hyperion, rattled violently as it entered lunar orbit. Commander Chen and I were controlling the primary systems, while the other 4 team members secured equipment and checked life support systems. Status report, Chen ordered, his voice surprisingly calm. Control systems stable, fuel at 42%, I reported, trying to keep my voice steady. Life support systems nominal, Volkov replied from the aft compartment. Comms ready, Rodriguez said, his fingers flying over the console. But Commander, I'm picking up a radio signal from the surface. The entire cockpit fell silent. What kind of signal? Chen asked, still not taking his eyes off the panel. Unknown, Commander. It doesn't match any patterns in our database, Rodriguez replied, his face tense. It sounds like white noise, possibly static interference. Record it and archive it, Chen ordered. Do not replay until we are back on Earth. Yes, Commander. I glanced at the laminated rules list in my suit pocket. Rule number 9. If any equipment automatically emits sound without being activated, turn it off immediately and do not use it again for at least 24 hours. I didn't dare say it aloud. We all knew, but no one wanted to be the first to mention that bizarre list of rules. The Hyperion module groaned as its retrothrusters fired powerful jets, slowing our descent. The gray lunar surface stretched beneath us, the South Pole a strangely dark region where sunlight rarely touched. Landing site 3 kilometers, I reported, my eyes glued to the screen. Adjust trajectory 4.2 degrees to the right, Chen ordered. As we descended, I suddenly noticed something strange about the landscape below. Commander, something's not right. Elaborate, Reed. Crater 14C, according to the map, it should be 1.2 kilometers in diameter, but according to our readings, it's twice that. I adjusted the external camera for a clearer view. And the shape, it's too perfect, too round. Chen was silent for a moment. Acknowledged, continue descent as planned. The final impact with the lunar surface was stronger than expected. We were thrown against our restraints despite being securely strapped in. Warnings flashed across the console. System status? Chen asked as soon as the Hyperion module came to a complete stop. Engines slightly damaged, fuel leak but contained, Ivanov reported from the engine compartment. Comms, Chen turned to Rodriguez. Still operational, Commander, but I'm not getting a response from Houston. Rule number 1, always maintain communication with Earth. If communication is lost for more than 12 hours, consider the mission failed, activate Omega Protocol, and prepare to depart immediately. Keep trying to establish contact, Chen ordered, his voice still calm, but I could see veins bulging on his temples. Connor, check surface stability around the module. Volkov, prepare air samples. Ivanov, check robot systems. Reed, you and I will prepare for the first EVA. Yes, Commander, we replied in unison. While preparing my extravehicular activity, EVA, suit, I couldn't help but think about the strange voice from the radio. Not Houston, not Earth, but not exactly static either. Reed, Chen called, pulling me from my thoughts. Are you all right? Yes, Commander, I lied, just a little shaken after the landing. Chen nodded, but I knew he didn't believe me. Remember the rules, especially rule number 2. Rule number 2, never under any circumstances go outside alone. Always maintain direct contact with at least one other team member. If contact is lost, return to base immediately. I understand, Commander. It took almost an hour to fully don the AVIA suit. This was the latest improved version, lighter and more flexible than previous bulky suits, but still difficult to move in. The sealed helmet featured a special nanocoating that allowed us to see clearly in varying light conditions. Before leaving the Hyperion module, Chen checked all communication channels. Comms check, Alpha channel clear, I replied. Beta channel clear, Volkov confirmed from the module. Gamma channel clear, Rodriguez reported, his voice slightly trembling. Delta channel clear, Connor said. Epsilon channel clear, Ivanov finished. Chen nodded. We'll be out for 30 minutes. Objective, set up a seismometer and collect the first soil samples. Reed, you're with me. The others monitor from the module. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. The vacuum of the moon greeted us, a dark, cold, and utterly silent void. Chen went first, his footsteps creating faint dust trails on the surface. I followed, trying not to look up at the sky, where Earth looked like a distant blue marble, small enough to cover with a thumb. Watch your step, Chen cautioned over the comms. The surface isn't as stable as it looks. We had walked about 50 meters when I noticed something strange. The lunar surface usually had a layer of gray regolith dust, but beneath our feet, it was almost completely black. Commander, do you see the color of the surface? Chen stopped, bent down to observe. Strange indeed, take a sample. I pulled out a test tube and scooped up some of the black dust. As I sealed the tube, I noticed the dust seemed to move. Not due to gravity, but as if it was swirling, reorganizing itself. Commander, I think. A sudden metallic clang interrupted me, coming from somewhere behind us. We both spun around. The Hyperion module still stood there, quiet and solid. Did you hear that? Chen asked over the comms. Hear what, Commander? Volkov replied. We didn't hear anything. Chen and I looked at each other through our helmet visors. I could see the worry in his eyes, mirroring my own fear. Continue the mission, Chen ordered after a moment of silence. We walked another 100 meters and began setting up the seismometer. While Chen planted the sensors into the surface, I collected more soil samples. Suddenly, I felt a shiver run down my spine. A sensation impossible to have in a temperature-controlled EVA suit. I slowly turned, and about 200 meters from us, a faint blue light reflected on the lunar surface. Rule number 4, if at any time you see a blue light reflecting on the lunar surface, mark its location on the map but do not approach it, do not take photos, do not record video. Commander, I whispered, my voice hoarse, to our right, 2 o'clock. Chen slowly looked up, following my gaze. He stood motionless like a statue. Mark the location, he said, his voice strangely flat, and returned to the module immediately. As I updated the coordinates on my GPS, the blue light seemed to move, not approaching us, but expanding, spreading. Commander, the light is... Don't look at it. Chen shouted, something he rarely did. Turn your back and go straight back to the module. Don't look back, don't stop, don't speak. I obeyed, my heart pounding in my chest. We walked as fast as we could in the moon's low gravity, trying not to stumble. Our comms were silent, too silent. The others should have been guiding us back. Houston, this is Artemis, Mission 10, requesting status check. Chen tried to re-establish contact with Earth, but only static replied. Hyperion module, this is AV1, requesting status check. I tried to contact my teammates, but there was no response. We had violated rule number 1, always maintain communication with Earth. When we were about 50 meters from the module, I started to see more clearly that something was wrong. The airlock door was open, and no one was there to meet us. "Commander." "I see it, Reed," Chen replied, his voice strained. "Maintain formation, approach cautiously." As we reached the airlock, I could see marks on the metal surface, deep gouges as if someone or something had tried to tear open the module's steel hull. And on the lunar surface, footprints led out from the module, 4 sets of footprints, but none leading back in. Inside the module, all lights were off, only the red emergency lights flashed, casting grotesque shadows on the walls. "Volkov, Rodriguez, Connor, Ivanov," Chen called over the comms, but still no response. We stepped into the module on high alert. The main cabin was empty, no signs of a struggle, no signs of our teammates. "Check system logs," Chen ordered. I connected to the central computer and opened the activity log. The last entry was 10 minutes, 43 minutes, 12 seconds ago. Airlock opened, manual override emergency. 43 minutes, 14 seconds later. EVA unplanned, 4 personnel. 43 minutes, 19 seconds later. Lost contact with all channels. 46 minutes, 2 seconds later. External audio detected, source unknown. 46 minutes, 8 seconds later. Knocking from north outer hull. 46 minutes, 15 seconds later. Knocking from south outer hull. 46 minutes, 22 seconds later. Knocking from east outer hull. 46 minutes, 29 seconds later. Knocking from west outer hull. 46 minutes, 36 seconds later. Knocking from outer roof. 46 minutes, 43 seconds later. Knocking from outer floor. 47 minutes later. All systems offline. Automatic restart initiated. "Commander," I whispered, not daring to speak louder, staring at the screen, his face under the helmet visor ashen. "Rule number 3, he said. "They didn't follow rule number 3. Rule number 3, if there is a knocking sound from outside the base, do not open the door, do not look out the window, turn off all lights, and wait exactly 15 minutes, no more, no less." A hiss from the comms system startled us. Static crackled, then a voice. Volkov's voice, but it wasn't right, it was too hollow, as if each word was disassembled and reassembled. "Reed, Chen, help us. Outside, follow us. Rule number 5, if the internal communication system broadcasts the voice of a deceased person or someone not present in the base, disconnect immediately and change frequencies every 6 hours. Chen reached to turn off the comms, but it was too late. The sound came again, that knocking on every surface of the module. As if hundreds of hands were beating on the metal at once. And then a dry click as the airlock door closed. We were trapped inside with whatever had taken our teammates. All the lights in the module simultaneously went out, leaving us in complete darkness. Part 3. The darkness in the Hyperion module was not the kind of darkness you experience on Earth. This was absolute darkness. The kind of darkness that only exists in deep space, not a single stray beam of light from a streetlight, no soft moonlight, nothing for the eyes to grasp onto. "Flashlights," Chen ordered, his voice echoing in the darkness. Now, I flipped on my helmet-mounted flashlight, but nothing happened. Chen did the same with the same result. "The power's completely out," I whispered. "Even the backup." "That's impossible," Chen replied, his voice calm but strained. "The system is designed with 3 layers of redundancy. To lose all power, someone would have to deliberately disable all circuits." The knocking had stopped, but now there was something worse. A dragging sound, as if claws were gently scraping along the module's hull. The dragging moved slowly from one spot to another, as if something was searching for an entry point. "We have to restart the systems," Chen said. "I'll go to the main console. You go to the storage compartment and find any light source." "Commander," I protested, "we shouldn't separate." "Reed," Chen began, but then I heard him sigh. "You're right, rule number 2, we'll go together." We were still in our full EVA suits, which provided us with some faint light from the internal helmet displays. Not enough to see far, but just enough not to bump into walls. Using that dim light, we slowly moved through the main compartment, trying not to make any sound. The dragging outside continued, sometimes pausing as if something was listening. "Commander," I whispered, "what about the others?" "Focus on the current task," Chen cut me off, his voice unnaturally cold. "Restore power, assess the situation, then we'll find them." But we both knew, from the way the footprints led out of the module with none returning, that our teammates were gone for good. As we approached the main console, I felt a chill run down my spine. My hand unconsciously went to my suit pocket where the rules list was kept. "Commander," I said, my voice hoarse, "I think we should wait 15 minutes just as rule number 3 said." Chen stopped. I could see the faint outline of his face in the suit. "You're right," he said. "That's why they got into trouble. They didn't wait, they opened the door." We stood still in the darkness, listening. The dragging sound seemed to follow a pattern from left to right, then stopping, then starting over. After about 10 minutes of silence, I noticed something flickering in the corner of the module, a small LED on the backup control panel. "Commander, look!" Chen turned his head towards the tiny light. "Emergency computer. It runs on a separate battery." We carefully moved towards the computer. The small screen lit up with a simple message: Omega level danger. Survival protocol initiated. 11:20:08 remaining. "A countdown," Chen mumbled. "But to what?" As he touched the keyboard, the screen changed. External temperature deg-C, external pressure 0 atm, power 12% and dropping. Crew vitals, Chen, Reed stable, Volkov undefined. Rodriguez undefined. Connor undefined. Ivanov undefined. "Undefined?" I whispered. "Not gone. It means the system still detects them somewhere." Chen typed some commands, but the screen only showed access denied, password alpha required. "Power's at only 12%, Chen said, his voice strained. "Enough for life support for about 6 hours. After that, we'll either freeze or suffocate, depending on which system fails first." Suddenly, the dragging outside stopped. The silence was even more terrifying than the sound. Then it started again, not dragging but knocking. But this time it had a rhythm, not random but like some form of Morse code. "Knock, pause, knock, pause, knock." "It's trying to communicate," I whispered. "Or make us think so," Chen replied. "Don't forget rule number 3, do not react to knocking." But the knocking continued, following the same pattern: knock, pause, knock, pause, knock. "SOS," I translated unconsciously. Chen froze. "That's not our teammates, how do you know?" I asked, trying not to let my voice tremble. "Because none of them knew Morse code," he replied, his voice cold. "I checked everyone's records before the flight. Only you and I know Morse code." I felt my blood run cold. If it wasn't our teammates, then who or what was tapping SOS outside our module in the vacuum of the moon? The knocking stopped, and then something else began. A furious scratching, as if something was trying to tear open the module's metal hull. "It's trying to get in," Chen said, his voice now unable to hide his fear. "But how? Even with specialized tools, it would take hours to cut through this hull." The scratching stopped, and once again there was silence. Then we heard something that froze us both. Human voices, not over the comms, but directly from outside the module. "Chen, Reed, please open the door. We can't breathe." It was Rodriguez's voice. Exactly, no errors, no distortion, but that was impossible. No one could speak in the vacuum of the moon. I looked at Chen, seeing the fear in his eyes mirroring my own horror. "Please, they're coming. Open the door." Volkov's voice, desperate and terrified, came next. "Reed, I know you can hear me, please." Connor's voice was small and weak, as if she was crying. "Rule number 3, Chen reminded, his voice also trembling. "Don't look, don't open the door, wait 15 minutes. "Commander, it's been 15 minutes, I replied. Chen looked at the clock on the screen. "You're right, it's been 16 minutes since the knocking started. So, according to the rules, we can turn on the lights," he said. "But do not open the door, never open the door." He reached for the backup control panel and entered a series of codes. A small beep sounded, and the emergency lights began to glow. A faint red light, but after the absolute darkness, it was like a dazzling sun. In the faint red light, we could see the module's interior. Everything seemed intact, no signs of a struggle, no signs of violence. But there was one thing that made my blood run cold, on the wall, written in a vivid red liquid. "Don't trust what you see." "Blood?" I asked, my voice cracking. Chen stepped closer, observing it carefully. "No, not blood. It's too dark and the texture isn't right." Suddenly, the knocking started again, but this time on all sides of the module, more violently, more intensely, as if dozens of hands were beating on the metal. "Chen, Reed, open the door, we see your lights, open the door." It was all their voices at once, screaming in desperation. But it wasn't right. No one could speak in the lunar environment, and no one could see the lights from outside. The emergency lights only shone inside. "They're not our teammates," Chen said, his voice hard. "Don't listen to them, don't answer them." He went to the main control panel and began entering commands. The screens lit up one by one, systems slowly restarting. "I'm rerouting power from non-essential systems," he explained. "Prioritizing life support and comms, we need to contact Houston." The voices outside began to change, no longer pleading but growing angry, hostile. "You will die here, we will get in, we will drag you out." The voices no longer sounded like our teammates. They were deeper, hoarser, with a strange metallic timbre. "Ignore them," Chen ordered. "Focus on the mission." The knocking became so powerful that the entire module vibrated. The metal groaned under the pressure. At some points, I could even see the outer hull starting to warp as if an unimaginable force was pressing on it. "Commander, the hull can't withstand it much longer," I said, trying to stay calm. "We have to do something." Chen looked up from the console, his face pale but resolute. "Rule number 11, Reed, if we see a non-human structure. Use Alpha Proxima 9 code and wait for instructions," I finished. "But we don't even know what it is." "It doesn't matter," Chen replied. "The procedure is the same." He turned back to the console and entered the code Alpha Proxima 9. The main screen turned red and a message appeared. "Alpha Proxima 9 code activated. Defense protocol initiating. Confirmation required." Chen pressed the confirmation button without hesitation. Immediately, a faint hum resonated from within the module's walls, as if a series of hidden mechanisms were being activated. The hum grew louder, turning into a piercing screech. The knocking outside stopped abruptly, and so did the voices. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then it came a blinding, terrible white-blue light that streamed through every crack, every crevice of the module. The light was so intense that even through the special visor of my helmet, I felt my eyes burning. "Don't look," Chen shouted, turning his back to the light. "At all costs, don't look at the light." I buried my face in my arms, trying to shield myself from the brilliance. Outside the module, I could hear a screeching sound not human or mechanical, but something entirely alien. As if the air itself was being torn apart, as if matter was disintegrating. And the voices, they were screaming in agony. No longer the voices of our teammates, but something ancient and indefinable. The screams were not words, but the primal sound of pure pain. The screeching and the light lasted for a few more seconds, then stopped as abruptly as they began, leaving the module in the dim red glow of the emergency lights. "Status report," Chen ordered, his voice hoarse. "Alive," I replied, gasping for breath. "Commander, what was that?" Chen slowly stood up and removed his helmet. I followed suit, noticing that the air in the module was still breathable. His face was pale, and there were streaks of blood running from his nose and ears. "Alpha Proxima 9 code," he said, wiping the blood with his hand. "Emergency weapons pre-installed in the module's hull, designed to deal with this situation." "How did you know?" I asked, stunned. There was nothing about this in the training documents. Chen looked directly into my eyes, his gaze cold and far older than his actual age. "Because I've been here before, Reed, not this specific area of the moon, but another. Artemis Mission 5, not in the official records." I stared at him, disbelieving. "Commander, what are you talking about?" "No time to explain," he cut me off. "That only stunned them temporarily. They will be back. They always come back." He turned back to the main screen, which displayed defense protocol complete, estimated effectiveness 67%, estimated safe time 43 minutes. Recommendation, depart location immediately. Chen looked at me, his eyes darkened. "Prepare for departure, Reed, now." "But our teammates?" "They are no longer our teammates." He cut me off, his voice chillingly cold. "Don't forget rule number 8. If you see a team member standing motionless, staring intently at the lunar surface for more than 10 minutes, unresponsive to their name being called, quarantine them and report to all other team members." I completed the sentence, realizing the horrifying truth. "They looked at something, the blue light." Chen nodded. "And now they belong to it. They are no longer human." I felt nauseous, clutching the wall to keep from falling. "So what do we do?" Chen went to a control panel hidden behind a metal plate on the wall. He typed a code, and the metal plate slid aside, revealing a secret compartment containing a weapon. "Rule number 7, he said, taking out the gun. "Do not sleep for more than 4 consecutive hours. At least 2 people must always be awake." "I don't understand." "Because when you sleep," he said, checking the magazine, "it will infiltrate your dreams, and when you wake up, you will no longer be yourself." He turned and handed me a second gun from the secret compartment. "I'll take the first watch. You sleep for no more than 4 hours, then we'll switch. We have to get out of here within 8 hours. "Go where?" I asked, taking the gun with reluctance. "There's nowhere to go on the moon." Chen looked at me, his eyes holding a profound fear I had never seen in a seasoned soldier like him. "The dead zone has a structure," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "A non-human structure, the only safe place from them. The only place with a strong enough signal to call Earth." "If it's not human-made," I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine, "then who made it?" Chen turned away, staring at the screen displaying external views of the module. The lunar surface was empty, quiet, and utterly devoid of any signs of life. But in the faint light, I could see a distant structure, a towering black spire with angles that defied Euclidean geometry. "The ones who came before us," he replied, his voice flat. "Long before us." In that moment, I knew that we were not the first to set foot on the moon, and the things hunting us were not the first ones there. Part 4. I tried to sleep as Chen instructed, but sleep did not come easily when you knew your teammates had been turned into something else and were hunting you outside the ship's fragile hull. I lay on my bunk in the sleeping compartment, my hand still clutching the gun Chen had given me. It wasn't a conventional weapon issued to astronauts. It was a peculiar device, compact yet heavy, with strange angular contours and a small screen displaying metrics I didn't understand. "It's called a high-frequency pulse weapon," Chen had explained when he handed it to me. "Conventional ammunition is useless against them. This weapon emits an energy pulse that disrupts their thought patterns." "Thought patterns?" I had asked. "What are you talking about?" Chen just looked at me with tired eyes. "Sleep, Reed, you'll need your strength." Now, lying in the darkness, I listened to the sounds of the module, the hum of the air filters, the soft clicks of electronic circuits, Chen's steady footsteps as he patrolled the compartments, and other sounds. A faint scratching outside the metal hull, distant but unmistakable. They were still out there, waiting. My eyes began to droop as exhaustion finally overwhelmed my fear. In a half-waking, half-dreaming state, I thought I heard a whisper, not from the comms or from outside, but from within my own head. "Reed, Alexander Reed, we see you, we know you." I jolted awake, drenched in cold sweat, the gun pointed into the darkness. Nothing, just the empty sleeping compartment illuminated by the dim red emergency light. The sliding door opened and Chen stepped in, his face strained. "You couldn't sleep," he said. It wasn't a question, I nodded. "I kept hearing voices." Chen sighed, sitting down beside me. "That's how they work. They find their way into the mind first, then the body. That's why rule number 7 is important. In deep sleep, the mind is most vulnerable." "Commander," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I need to know what we're up against. You said you'd been here before. Artemis Mission 5. Chen was silent for a long time, his gaze distant. Finally, he pulled a small device from his pocket, like a USB stick but far more complex in design. "This is my log from Artemis Mission 5, he said. "The data is encrypted. No one at NASA or the government can access it. I swore I'd never reveal what happened, but the situation has changed." He plugged the device into a port on a nearby screen. The screen lit up, displaying a password prompt. "AON 319 Delta, he said, and the screen switched to display a series of files. "These are all the records from Artemis Mission 5. Images, audio, video, my notes, everything the government tried to erase." He opened a video file. A blurry image appeared of an astronaut walking on the lunar surface in an area I didn't recognize. The astronaut moved strangely, not the usual bouncy gait in low gravity, but jerky, robotic movements. "This is Lieutenant Phillips," Chen explained, his voice low, 4 to 8 hours after exposure to the blue light. In the video, the astronaut suddenly stopped, turning towards the camera. His helmet visor reflected the sunlight, but I could see something moving inside. He had become a host, Chen said. The body was still there, but the mind was gone, replaced by something else. "Something else?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Chen opened another file, a microscopic image. It showed a human blood cell, but something was wrong. Inside the cell was a strange, complex structure, unlike any organism I had ever seen. "We call them the Moon Men," he said. "Not because they come from the moon, but because we found them here. They are a form of microbial life, but with a collective intelligence. They exist in the form of dust. The black dust you saw. Rule number 10, each team member must check the soles of their boots after every walk on the lunar surface. If you see black, mud-like material, destroy the boots immediately and quarantine yourself for 4 to 8 hours. They invade the human body through breath, through skin, through any opening. Then they reprogram the cells, replacing human DNA with their own structure. The process takes about 48 hours to complete." I felt nauseous. "And our teammates?" Chen looked at me, his eyes darkened. "They've begun the transition. When they looked at the blue light, it found its way into their minds. They opened the airlock, went outside, and now they are no longer themselves." He switched to another file, a video from inside a module similar to ours. An astronaut was held in a glass isolation chamber. He looked normal except for a small black streak on his neck, like a birthmark but with intricate patterns. "This is Lieutenant Morris," Chen said. "The early stage of infection. Watch." In the video, the astronaut began to convulse. His skin stretched as if something inside was trying to break free. Then, even more horrifying, the skin on his face began to flow. Not melt, but move, reorganize, as if it had become a conscious liquid. I turned away, unable to watch further. "Turn it off." Chen turned off the video but opened another file. This was a map of the moon with areas marked in red. "These are the areas where we know the moon men are," he explained. Initially, there were only a few spots, but after each failed mission, the infected area expanded. "But why would NASA keep sending people if they knew about this danger?" I asked, horrified. "Because of the structure," Chen replied, pointing to a spot on the map, precisely the black spire I had seen from the external camera. "It was not created by humans or the moon men, it was there long before they appeared, and it contains technology that we cannot understand, but that could change the future of humanity." "So they are willing to sacrifice astronauts to get it?" I said, feeling anger rising. "Not just astronauts," Chen replied, his eyes mournful. Artemis Mission 5 had 8 crew members. Only I returned, but what they don't know is that I brought an uninvited passenger with me. He rolled up his sleeve to reveal a black streak on his wrist, similar to the one on Lieutenant Morris's neck in the video. I jumped up, the gun pointed at him. "You're infected." "Calm down, Reed," Chen said, his voice still calm. "This is a scar, not an active infection. I was infected on Artemis Mission 5, but I found a way to fight it." "To control it." "How?" I asked, still not lowering the gun. "The structure," he replied. "Inside it, there's a chamber. It emits a form of energy that the moon men cannot withstand. It doesn't kill them, but it puts them into a dormant state. I went into that chamber, and it froze the infection process. That's why I'm alive and still myself." "Then why did you come back here?" I asked, still not entirely trusting. "Why risk your life again?" Chen looked me straight in the eyes. "Because the dormancy is weakening. The cells are waking up. I need to go back into that chamber or I'll become like them." I felt a chill run down my spine. "And that's why you volunteered for Artemis Mission 10? "Partially," he admitted. "But there's another reason. Inside that structure, I found information about the moon men, about their origins, and about the beings who built that spire." "Aliens?" I asked, not sure if I wanted to hear the answer. "Not exactly," Chen replied. "It's us, humans, but not from this era." I stared at him, uncomprehending. "Are you talking about time travel?" "I'm talking about a loop," he explained. "A time loop we're all stuck in. The moon men are not alien creatures. They are a biological weapon created by humans in the distant future. A weapon that went out of control and came back to attack its creators." I felt my head spinning. "I don't understand." "That structure is a time machine, Reed, built by the last survivors of humanity trying to send a warning back to the past. But something went wrong. Instead of just the warning, they inadvertently brought the moon men back to the past with them." He gestured towards the window, where the lunar surface stretched under the starlight. "And now we're here, inadvertently releasing the very thing that will lead to our demise." Suddenly, the module shook violently. The sound of tearing metal echoed from the other side of the ship. "They're back," Chen said, jumping up and checking his weapon. "And stronger. They're learning, adapting." He turned to me, his eyes resolute. "You have 2 choices, Reed. Stay here and die or come with me to the structure. I can't guarantee your survival, but at least you'll have a chance." I heard more tearing metal from the far side of the module. They were breaching the hull, getting in. "How much time do we have?" I asked, starting to gather my gear. "Not much," Chen replied, checking the screen. "Put on your EVA suit, take enough oxygen for 8 hours. We'll have to move fast and not stop." As we hurried to prepare, I couldn't help but look out the window towards the distant black spire on the lunar surface. From this distance, I could see more clearly its strange details. Angles that defied normal geometry, surfaces that seemed both flat and curved at the same time, and a faint light emanating from its peak. "Commander," I called, my voice trembling, "I think the spire is changing." Chen looked in the direction I pointed, and I saw the fear in his eyes, something I never thought I'd see in a man like Marcus Chen. "It senses us," he said. "It's waking up." The wall behind us burst open with a deafening explosion. Air rushed out in a powerful vortex. And standing in the breach was something wearing a spacesuit, but no longer human. It was once Alina Volkov. Now her helmet visor was shattered, but no vacuum pulled her out. Instead, the face behind the glass was a churning, writhing mass of black goo with hundreds of tiny eyes forming and dissolving within the substance. It is time, a voice hissed from the comms, no longer Volkov's voice, but something ancient and terrible. Join us, become part of the future. Chen raised his gun and fired without hesitation. A blue energy beam shot out, hitting the creature directly in the chest. It recoiled, its body convulsing in intense pain, but it did not fall. Go! Chen shouted, pulling me towards the auxiliary airlock on the opposite side of the module. We can't kill them, only slow them down. As we ran through the compartments, I heard more tearing metal, not just one, but multiple breaches being made throughout the module. They were attacking from all directions. At the auxiliary airlock, Chen quickly entered a code on the console. The door slid open and we rushed in, closing it immediately behind us. Helmets on, he ordered, tightening his own. Check oxygen, check pressure, all systems. I complied, my hands trembling so much I almost dropped my visor. My AVIA suit indicated all systems were nominal. Oxygen sufficient for 742. Ready? Chen asked over the comms, his voice strained. Ready, I replied, though I felt I had never been less ready. Chen pressed the button to open the airlock, and the moon's vacuum sucked us out into the absolute darkness and silence. As we stood on the lunar surface, I looked back at the Hyperion module, now riddled with strange holes from which grotesque shapes were crawling out. The 4 creatures that were once our teammates stood in a line, watching us with faces that were no longer faces. Don't look back, Chen said, his voice cold over the comms. Run towards the spire, and whatever happens, don't stop. We ran as fast as we could in the moon's low gravity towards the distant black spire, which was now emitting a strange light. Behind us, the creatures began to pursue, not by running, but by distorting. Their bodies stretched, twisted, flowing across the lunar surface as if gravity and physics no longer applied to them. And from the darkness ahead, more things were moving towards us. Unrecognizable, indescribable shapes, moving in ways that defied any biological laws. We were surrounded. Part 5. The air in my AVIA suit became hot and stuffy as we ran. The moon was not a place for marathons. The fine regolith dust, like flour beneath our feet, made every step difficult, while the 1/6 Earth gravity turned every jump into a potentially traumatic event if not careful. Take a zigzag path, Chen ordered over the comms. They move in straight lines, use the terrain. I glanced back and immediately wished I hadn't. The creatures pursuing us, the things that were once our teammates, had completely transformed, no longer wearing spacesuits. Their bodies seemed to have melted into a glossy black substance, constantly changing shape. As they moved, their surfaces cracked open to reveal luminescent blue spots from within, like tiny stars trapped in living asphalt. Don't look at them, he yelled. That light, that's how they infect. I turned away, focusing on running. Ahead, the black spire was still at least 3 kilometers away, a distance that seemed short on Earth but was a terrifyingly long journey on the cratered lunar surface and in a restrictive spacesuit. How much further? I asked, my breath ragged. Too far if we keep going like this, Chen replied. We need transportation. What transportation? Everything's in the module. Chen didn't answer immediately. Instead, he changed direction, leading us towards a small crater about 200 meters away. Artemis, Mission 5 left some contingencies, he said finally. If it's still there. We raced towards the crater, leaping from rock to rock, trying to maintain momentum. Behind us, the creatures were closing the gap. They moved at terrifying speed, gliding across the lunar surface like drops of mercury. Commander, hurry, I urged, feeling panic rise. They're catching up. Chen didn't reply. As we reached the rim of the crater, he stopped, sweeping his AVIA suit flashlight along the cliff face below. The crater wasn't too deep, perhaps 30 meters, but large enough to hide a secret. There it is, he said, pointing to a glint reflecting the flashlight. We carefully slid down the crater wall, rocks and dust crumbling beneath our feet. At the bottom, I saw what Chen was looking for, a metal hatch cleverly camouflaged in the rock face with a faded NASA logo. Hurry. He said, enter a code on the panel beside the door. They'll be here any minute. The door opened with a soft hiss, revealing a small compartment drilled into the rock. Inside were 2 miniaturized lunar rovers, more compact versions of those used in the Apollo missions. How? I began to ask. No time to explain, Chen cut me off, pulling one rover out of the compartment. Grab the other one, check the battery. They were designed to operate in these extreme conditions. I pulled the other rover out, checking its simple control panel. A green light glowed, still powered, a miracle after years of neglect. We have company, Chen said, looking up at the crater rim. I looked up and saw the 4 creatures standing there looking down at us. In the dim sunlight, they looked even more horrifying. Black, writhing, coiled bodies with flickering blue lights within like tiny stars about to explode. "Get in the vehicles," Chen ordered. "Follow me, don't stop, don't look back." We jumped into the rovers. They were simple, roofless vehicles, just a seat mounted on 4 large studded wheels with a minimalist control panel and a compact electric motor. Chen flipped a switch on his rover, and it lurched forward with a soft whine. I followed suit. The rover vibrated beneath me as it accelerated, and we raced up the crater wall on a pre-designed path. Clearly, this wasn't the first time these vehicles had been used. As we reached the rim, I glanced back to see the creatures had jumped into the crater. Their bodies writhed in the air like dancing black serpents. "Towards the spire," Chen yelled. "Straight ahead, don't stop for anything." We sped across the lunar surface, the rovers kicking up regolith dust behind us as we bounced over rocks and small craters. In low gravity, each bump almost sent us flying into the air before landing back on the ground in a cloud of dust. The speed and the dust storm we created seemed to temporarily slow our pursuers, but not all of them. "Ahead!" Chen shouted. "Look!" From the shadow of a large crater ahead, something was crawling out. Not the transformed moon men, but something more primordial larger. It was a colossal mass of black substance, at least 10 meters wide, moving like a giant amoeba. As it oozed into the sunlight, its surface cracked open to reveal hundreds of mouths filled with sharp teeth and thousands of tiny glowing blue eyes. "Divert!" Chen ordered, swerving to the right. I hastily followed, my heart pounding in my chest. We sped along the crater rim, trying to bypass the monster. But it clearly anticipated our move. A portion of it detached like a black wave and surged directly towards us, forming a black wall about 5 meters high. "Shoot it!" Chen yelled, one hand on the steering, the other pulling out his gun. I took out my weapon, trying to aim while still controlling the rover. We fired simultaneously, blue energy beams shooting out and striking the black wall. It cracked, fissures appearing on its surface. Blue light leaked out like glowing blood. But it wasn't enough. The wall still stood, and we were hurtling towards it at full speed. "Jump!" Chen ordered, leaping from his rover, flying through the air in low gravity. I followed, jumping from my rover just a second before it crashed into the black wall. But instead of colliding, the rover was swallowed. The wall opened like a mouth, engulfing the vehicle and closing around it. I landed 15 meters away, rolling on the lunar surface. My helmet struck a rock, leaving a small crack on the visor. Warnings flashed on the helmet display. "Minor leak. Chen," I called over the comms, panicked. "Commander Chen." "I'm fine," his voice replied weakly, "but alive, to your right, don't move suddenly." I slowly turned my head and saw Chen lying 20 meters away, one leg pinned under a large rock. He wasn't moving, but his arm was still raised, signaling me to stay put. The monster, that black mass, seemed preoccupied with digesting the rover. It convulsed and writhed around the metal. Small mouths appeared on its surface, tearing and crushing. "Listen," Chen said softly over the comms. "I'm trapped and my leg, I think it's broken." "I'm coming to help you," I said, starting to move. "No," he yelled. "You don't have time, look behind you." I glanced over my shoulder and saw the familiar shapes of the first 4 moon men, once our teammates, approaching from the direction of the module. And from other directions, more creatures were appearing, black, writhing blue eyes glowing in the darkness. "We're surrounded," Chen said, "but you can still escape. My rover is still intact about 50 meters back behind that large rock." "I can't leave you," I protested. "That's an order, Reed," Chen said, his voice hard. "One of us has to reach the spire, has to send the warning, has to break the loop." He reached into his suit pocket and pulled out the USB device containing his log. "Catch," he threw it towards me and I caught it midair. It was a small device but strangely heavy. "Everything you need is in there," Chen explained. "Instructions to enter the spire, how to operate the chamber, and the message that must be sent back to the past." "I don't understand," I said, feeling desperate. "What are you talking about?" "It will be clear when you get there," he replied. "Now go." He drew his gun and fired at the approaching creatures. Blue energy beams tore through the darkness, but there were too many creatures, and they were coming from all directions. "Go!" he yelled again, and I realized this was my last chance. With a heavy heart, I forced myself up and ran towards the large rock Chen had indicated. Behind me, I heard the gunfire continue and Chen's screams, not over the comms, but the screams of a human being tormented to the limits of pain. I found the rover, still intact as Chen had said, and jumped in, starting the engine. The rover shot forward, kicking up regolith dust behind it. I couldn't help but turn my head to look back, and the sight would haunt me forever. Chen was enveloped by the black creatures. They weren't killing him, they were transforming him. His spacesuit was torn, and his skin was changing color. Blackness began at his injured leg, spreading up his body. He was still firing, but his movements were becoming slower, weaker. And then he turned towards me, and I saw half of his face was already transformed blackened flesh, glowing blue eyes. The other half of Marcus Chen's face looked at me one last time, and his lips mouthed a single word: "Run!" I turned away, tears streaming inside my helmet, and sped the rover towards the distant black spire. Humanity's last hope, if what Chen said was true. Behind me, a black army was gathering. Hundreds of creatures, once human or something else, now all part of the Moon Men, and leading them was a new creature, tall, powerful, with a face I once knew well. Marcus Chen, my commander, my mentor, now my most terrifying enemy. The real race against death had begun. Part 6. The black spire towered before me, defying every law of geometry I knew. It was simultaneously near and far, colossal and tiny, as if it existed in multiple dimensions at once. Its surface didn't reflect the sunlight, but seemed to absorb it, a vertical black hole against the starry sky. I stopped the rover about 100 meters from the spire, not daring to approach closer. From this distance, I could see more clearly the details of this strange structure. It wasn't made of rock or metal or any material I had ever seen. It seemed alive. Its surface subtly shifted, like breathing skin, with delicate ripples moving from bottom to top. And all over its surface were symbols, not writing in the conventional sense, but complex patterns, spiraling and symmetrical, glowing with a faint blue light. Looking at them too long made my head ache, as if my brain was trying to decipher a language not designed for human comprehension. I checked the display in my helmet, oxygen at 417. The crack in my visor was spreading, and there was no communication signal. Behind me, through the suit's motion sensors, I could see the horde of creatures approaching. Hundreds of black dots moving like a river of death. I had no other choice. I took out Chen's USB device and plugged it into my spacesuit's data port. The helmet display flickered, then showed a simple map, a schematic of the spire with a marked point at its base. "Entrance," I muttered, and began to move, following the directions. As I approached the spire, the air around it felt strange. It wasn't that gravity changed, but time. Each step seemed to stretch on forever while my mind raced at breakneck speed. I felt like I was walking through honey, every movement a struggle against an invisible force. I circled the base of the spire, searching for the entrance marked on the map. Its surface looked the same everywhere, black, subtly shifting, covered in glowing symbols. But then I saw a different pattern, a complex spiral larger than the others, with a more intense blue glow. According to the map, this was the entrance. I placed my hand on the spiral, and immediately something connected, not with my spacesuit, but with my mind. A torrent of information poured into my brain: images, sounds, emotions, concepts impossible to describe in words. I saw Earth, but not our Earth. An older Earth, blackened and dead. I saw ruined cities, black oceans teeming with glowing creatures. And I saw humans, the last survivors, hiding in deep bunkers, fighting a long-lost war. I almost fell from the intensity of the images, but my hand remained glued to the spiral's surface, unable to pull away. And then the spiral opened. Not like a conventional door, but as an expansion from within, as if space itself was folding. A void appeared in the spire's surface, expanding into a dark tunnel leading inside. I forced myself to stand, my head still reeling from the images that weren't mine, and stepped in. As soon as I crossed the threshold, the void closed behind me, cutting off all contact with the outside world. Inside, the spire wasn't as dark as I expected. Instead, it was illuminated by the same faint blue light from the symbols on the walls, creating a dim, half-lit space where shadows defied normal physics. The interior wasn't a simple room, but a complex labyrinth of corridors, staircases, and chambers. All of them followed a non-Euclidean geometry: angles that weren't 90 degrees, lines that curved back into themselves, and distances that seemed to shift as I moved. I followed the map from Chen's device, carefully navigating the labyrinth. The arrow on the display led me through corridors and chambers to the ultimate goal, what Chen called the chamber. As I moved, I began to notice something on the walls. At first, I thought they were just more complex symbols, but looking closer, I realized they were images, moving patterns that told a story. I stopped to observe one particularly vivid depiction, and it seemed to change as I watched. It showed a sequence of events: Earth, humanity, a global catastrophe with black smoke plumes, and then the moon. Small human figures building something on the moon, a spire. This spire, I whispered. Is this history or the future? I continued to move, each new chamber and corridor revealing more pieces of the story. I saw images of experiments, creatures in test tubes, transformed humans, and I saw the moon mend their origin. One image was particularly striking. Scientists in a laboratory, working with black samples, then the same scientists but with glowing blue eyes, then the disaster spreading until the entire Earth was covered in blackness. They created them, I realized with horror. Humans created the moon men as a biological weapon, and they turned back to attack. I moved faster, feeling time running out. Finally, I reached a large door, not made of the same black material as the rest of the spire, but shiny metal, a human door. The map ended here with a simple note: chamber inside. Caution. Carefully, I placed my hand on the door, and it opened, sliding silently to the side. Inside was a vast circular space, with a ceiling so high it was invisible in the darkness. In the center of the room was a strange structure that looked like a chair but was made of the same black material as the spire, with countless tubes and electronic circuits connected to it. And on the chair was a skeleton. I approached, my heart pounding. The skeleton was still wearing a spacesuit, a design far older than mine from the previous century. On the chest was a faded badge: Project Apollo, an unannounced mission, Apollo 18. Apollo 18, I whispered, reading the badge. Impossible. Apollo 17 was supposed to be the last Apollo mission to the moon. There was no Apollo 18 in the history books. I examined the skeleton more closely. No signs of violence or injury. It seemed this astronaut had died of old age, as if they had lived here in this spire for decades. Beside the chair was a control panel and a screen. I turned it on, and it lit up with a simple message: to the one who comes after. If you are reading this, I have failed, but you can still succeed. The loop must be broken. Listen to my recording. Complete the mission. Save humanity. I pressed play, and a hoarse, ancient voice sounded, an American man with a distinct Southern accent. My name is Thomas Walker, astronaut of Apollo 18, a secret mission to the moon in 1973. We were sent to investigate strange radio signals from the moon's south pole. What we found was the spire, a time machine built by humans from the far future. They tried to send a warning back to the past about a catastrophic event that would occur. The creation of the moon men, a biological weapon designed to cure disease but mutated into something far more horrible. A collective consciousness that could infect and transform all life forms, but in sending the warning, they inadvertently brought a sample of the creature itself back to the past. A time loop. The moon men came from the future, but will be created in the past. Because humans found them here on the moon and studied them. I stayed here in this spire, using the chamber to prevent the spread, but I couldn't do much more. Age caught up with me, but you can still change everything. This chair is the control panel of the time machine. It can send a message, a warning to any point in the past, but it only works once, and the user will not survive. The message must be clear, concise, and reach the right time before Project Chimera begins in 2036. That's when the moon men were first created from the sample found on the moon. The loop must be broken. The recording ended with a hacking cough from an old man, and then silence again. I stood there, stunned by the scale of this tragedy. A perfect time loop the moon men created in the future, traveling back in time to the past, discovered by humans, and then recreated only to turn back and attack their creators. A loop with no beginning or end, but I could end it. I walked to the chair, carefully moving Walker's remains aside. As I did, a metal bar fell from his soot-an ancient USB stick with the words Apollo 18 log crudely etched into it. I plugged it into the control panel, and a series of files appeared on the screen: images, videos, notes, evidence of everything, enough to convince the world if I could get it back to Earth. But the time control also appeared, ready to send a message back to the past, a chance to end the loop forever. I had to make a decision: return to Earth with the evidence, hoping to convince everyone, or send the message back in time and end everything immediately, but sacrificing myself. A noise broke my thoughts. A metallic clanging echoed through the spire's corridors. They had found an entry point. They were coming. I had no more time. I sat down in the chair, feeling it adapt around me like a living organism embracing me. Wires and tubes automatically connected to my spacesuit, piercing through fabric and steel as if they were nothing but air. Pain flooded my body as the electronic circuits connected to my nervous system, but I forced myself to focus. I had to compose the message, concise, but enough to prevent the catastrophe. The screen before me lit up, displaying a simple text input panel and a line of text. Enter message and specific time to send. The noise continued, closer, heavy, non-human footsteps and the sound of tearing metal. I forced myself to concentrate, ignoring the pain spreading through my body, and began to type. To the President of the United States and the National Security Council, this is an urgent warning from the future. Project Chimera must not proceed. The black lunar sample contains dangerous alien organisms. If developed, it will lead to the extinction of humanity. Attached is validating data. This is not a drill. Repeat, cancel Project Chimera and destroy all samples. I entered the date, May 5, 2034, 2 years before the project began. Enough time to convince the authorities. The chamber door rattled as something crashed into it from outside. A crack appeared in the metal with black liquid oozing through. I pressed the send button without hesitation. Immediately, intense pain tore through my entire body. I felt myself being torn apart, not physically, but at a quantum level. My mind was stretched through time and space, transforming into pure energy. The door burst open, and the moon men surged in. Dozens of black, glowing-eyed creatures. Leading them was Chen, or what used to be Chen. His body was now twisted and unnaturally contorted. But they were too late. The process had begun. The message was being sent back in time. Through the excruciating pain, I saw the creatures approach, and I realized they weren't attacking. They were disintegrating, their bodies crumbling into tiny particles of light, vanishing into the air. "We are the future. We are the future," their collective voice hissed from all directions. It cannot be denied. Chen, or what used to be Chen, approached me closest. His distorted face still bore traces of the man he once was. "Reed," a weak, almost human voice emanated from the creature. "What have you done?" "I broke the loop," I replied, each word a struggle through the pain. "Changed the past, created a new timeline." The creature shook its distorted head. "Impossible, the loop is absolute." "Not anymore," I whispered, feeling my body begin to disintegrate. "This is the end." Chen, or what used to be Chen, screeched in agony as its body crumbled into a shower of light. Around me, all the other creatures were experiencing the same fate, vanishing as their timeline was erased. And now it was my turn. I felt myself disappearing, not dying, but being erased from reality. I was experiencing millions of different timelines, other versions of the world, different endings for humanity. A new timeline was being created. One without the moon men, without global catastrophe, without the spire on the moon. A timeline where I had never existed. A blinding light enveloped everything as the control chamber exploded in a storm of energy. My body shattered into billions of particles of light. My mind expanded to embrace the universe. In my last moment of consciousness, I saw it a green earth, untouched by the moon men, a humanity that continued to grow and thrive. A future I had saved but would never see. And then everything went dark. Part 7. I woke up in excruciating pain. It shouldn't have happened. I shouldn't still exist. I had sent the message back in time, broken the loop, and been erased from reality. So why was I still feeling? Opening my eyes was a battle. My eyelids were heavy as if cast from lead, and when I finally managed to open them, I saw nothing but a blurry red. Blood? No, light. The faint red light, like the emergency lights in the Hyperion module. My body didn't respond to my brain's commands. I tried to move my arm, but nothing happened. Tried to turn my head, but my neck was stiff. I didn't even feel like I was breathing, although my mind was still active. "You're awake." The voice didn't come from outside. It resonated in my head. Chen's voice, but wrong, deeper, emptier, as if spoken from inside a hollow cave. "Commander," I tried to say, but no sound came out. Instead, my thoughts seemed to echo in the dark space. "No longer Commander," the voice replied. "No longer Chen. We are one now, and you will soon join us." Slowly, my vision cleared. I was in a room. No, not a room, it was a compartment in the Hyperion module. I recognized the control panels, the screens, and the familiar metal walls, but everything was wrong. The entire space was covered in a layer of glossy black substance, like living asphalt, subtly moving and breathing. It covered every surface, dripping from the ceiling and oozing along the floor. Small blue lights flickered within it, like distant stars. And before me stood Chen, or at least something that used to be Chen. His body was still in a spacesuit, but most of it was torn away, revealing the skin beneath no longer skin. Instead, it was the same black, writhing, coiling substance with intricate patterns of glowing blue lights flickering within. His face still had the shape of a human, but there were no eyes, only two deep, glowing blue sockets. "You tried to send the message," the Chen creature said, still echoing in my mind. "You thought you succeeded, but that was just an illusion, an experience we created within your mind while we began the transformation process." I tried to shake my head to deny, to resist, but my body still didn't respond. Instead, I realized I was looking down and saw my own body. What I saw filled my mind with pure horror. I was lying on a table, or perhaps a vat, formed from the same black substance. My spacesuit had been completely torn away, revealing the body beneath, but it was no longer a human body. My skin had been peeled back, revealing muscles and organs underneath, but even those were in the process of transformation. Black tendrils were spreading through the tissue like parasitic veins, replacing every part of me with that black substance. My chest had been torn open, revealing my ribcage and internal organs. All were beating and functioning, but slowly being replaced by alien structures. The most horrific part was that I felt no pain from my torn body. I only felt a presence, a new consciousness spreading through every cell. "Beautiful, isn't it?" the Chen creature said, moving closer to observe the process. "The ultimate evolution. No more divisions between individuals, no more limitations of the physical body. Join us and you will experience everything, every memory, every thought, every emotion of everyone." Behind the Chen creature, I saw the other creatures enter. The things that were once Volkov, Rodriguez, Connor, and Ivanov. They too had completely transformed, their bodies twisting and distorting in incomprehensible ways, no longer human in form, but I could still recognize them in some strange way, sensing the pattern of their minds. "All are one," they said in unison, their voices echoing in my head. "No more fear, no more pain, no more loneliness." I tried to resist, screaming in my mind. "This isn't evolution, this is the destruction of everything that makes us human." "What is human?" the Chen creature asked, tilting its distorted head. "A lonely creature trapped in a skull, never truly understanding another. A creature that destroys itself and its planet. We are beyond that. We are the future." The Chen creature extended a hand, no longer a hand, but a shape-shifting mass of black substance, and touched my face. I felt it penetrate, not through skin but deeper into my mind, and suddenly I saw everything. I saw images from Chen's past, his childhood in Tokyo, his years of astronaut training, his wife and daughter. But then the memories became darker. Artemis Mission 5, what truly happened? He had been infected, as he said, but never truly fought back. He had surrendered. He had become a host and returned to Earth like a Trojan horse, carrying the moon men with him, hidden. Then I saw Volkov's, Rodriguez's, Connor's, Ivanov's memories all merging into a continuous stream of consciousness. And not just theirs, thousands, millions of other minds, all connected in a vast network of collective consciousness. Astronauts from previous missions, scientists from secret labs, and finally, all of humanity transformed, assimilated, becoming part of the moon men. But there was more. I saw memories that weren't human, not from Earth, not even from this era. Memories of beings from other worlds, other eras, absorbed into the collective consciousness. The moon men weren't just a biological weapon created by humans, they were part of something larger, older, something that had traveled across stars and time. And I saw the truth about the spire. "You understand now," the Chen creature said, withdrawing its hand from my face. "The time loop was not an accident. It was a plan, a way to ensure our existence across all timelines, all realities. You cannot change what was, is, and always will be." I wanted to cry, but my body was no longer capable of it. Instead, I felt a growing presence in my mind, the collective consciousness penetrating deeper into the recesses of myself, slowly erasing the human Alexander Reed. "Do not resist," the Chen creature said, its voice almost gentle. "The process is much easier if you accept it. Otherwise, it may not be pleasant." As if to emphasize the point, one of the Volkov creatures, I think, reached towards my open chest. Its black, tendril-like fingers extended, transforming into blade-like structures, and began to manipulate, cut, and transform. The pain finally came, horrifying in its intensity, beyond my mind's ability to comprehend. I felt every nerve ripped apart and reassembled, every organ divided and reconstructed, every cell infiltrated and altered. This wasn't surgery, this was a complete recreation. "Stop," I screamed in my mind, desperately reaching out with all my remaining will. I'll do anything, I'll join. The Chen creature stopped the pain. The Volkov creature paused, its blade fingers still embedded deep in my chest. It turned towards the Chen creature as if communicating in silence. You speak truly? The Chen creature asked. Yes, I lied, trying to keep my mind closed, hiding the plan forming within. I will join willingly. I want to be part of you. The Chen creature tilted its head, its glowing blue eye sockets staring at me. You lie, but it matters not. The transformation will continue, whether you wish it or not. The Volkov creature withdrew its blade fingers from my chest, leaving black, gaping holes where alien matter was spreading inwards. However, the Chen creature continued, it is interesting that some part of your mind still believes it can escape this. Some part of you still hopes. That is fascinating. We have long forgotten that feeling. The Chen creature gestured for the other creatures to step back. We will give you a chance not to escape your fate. That is impossible, but to understand, to see the full truth before you become one of us. My chest closed, not naturally, but the black substance intertwined, forming a new shell, like skin but not skin. I felt control returning to my limbs, though it was a strange sensation, as if I was controlling a body that wasn't my own. Stand up, the Chen creature ordered. I obeyed, my legs shaky as I stood on the floor covered in black substance. I looked down and saw my body, still human in shape, but the surface was now a glossy black shell with glowing blue veins running beneath, like luminous blood vessels. Come with us, the Chen creature said, moving towards the chamber door. There is something we wish to show you. I followed, my legs moving strangely, not quite walking, but a softer movement as if I was gliding. The other creatures surrounded me, leading me through the module's corridors. The module had completely changed. All surfaces were covered in the black substance. But it wasn't just a coating. It had become part of the structure, transforming metal and plastic into something entirely alien. The walls subtly pulsed as if breathing, and pipes and cables had become vein-like structures carrying a glowing black liquid. They led me to the main compartment where the primary control panel once sat. Now it had transformed into something resembling a breathing table, an organic structure rising from the floor with multiple screens made of black substance displaying incomprehensible images. And in the center of the room was a portal, not a conventional door, but an archway of swirling blue light, twisting and writhing in the air. It was about 3 meters wide, reaching to the ceiling, and I could sense something from beyond it. A presence, a consciousness. The spire was not a time machine, the Chen creature said, standing beside me. That was just a simplistic human understanding of a technology far beyond their comprehension. It is a gateway, a door to what you might call the outside. Outside what? I asked, unable to take my eyes off the swirling archway of light. Outside time, outside space, outside the reality, you know, the Chen creature said, its voice almost hushed. That is where we came from, where we will return. With all those we have connected. I felt new horror rise within me. All of this, the moon men, the time loop, all just to create this. Indeed, a door to our world, an entrance for our masters. As if on cue, the archway of light shimmered and something began to emerge from within. I couldn't look directly at it, not because it was too bright or too dark, but because it adhered to a geometry that did not exist in our reality. It was simultaneously colossal and tiny, simple and incredibly complex, with parts that bent and folded in impossible directions. My mind almost shattered as it tried to comprehend the thing emerging from the portal. It was not a creature by any definition I knew. It was something from beyond reality, a pattern of pure consciousness, a concept that had taken form, and it was looking at me. Not with eyes, for it had none, but with a terrifyingly focused attention that made me feel stripped down to my very bones. Our masters, the Chen creature whispered, kneeling. The other creatures followed suit, bowing their heads before the presence. I wanted to run, but my body was no longer mine. Instead, I found myself kneeling too, pulled down by an irresistible force. The entity from the portal communicated, not with words or images, but with pure concepts directly into my mind. The last one, it said, though said wasn't the right word. The witness, the recorder. I don't understand, I replied, my mind reeling. Understanding is not important. Witnessing is enough. Recount the history of the old world. The entity extended, not a hand, but a part of itself reaching towards me. It touched my forehead, and my mind was flooded with an enormous torrent of information. Images, sounds, emotions, memories from billions of beings across countless worlds and ages. I saw the birth and death of innumerable civilizations. I saw worlds consumed by darkness, minds connected in a vast network of consciousness. I saw this entity and others like it traveling through the universe, from one reality to another, collecting, connecting, assimilating. And I saw the fate of Earth, not in one timeline, but in all possible timelines. In every version of reality, the moon men always appeared. In every version, humanity was always assimilated. In every version, the portal was always opened, and entities like this always stepped through. It was an unbroken loop, an unchangeable destiny. One must remain, the entity communicated. One to record, one to tell those who come after what happened here. Those who come after? I asked, confused. There will be no one else. You will take everyone. There are always those who come after, the entity replied, in the infinite universe, in the infinite timelines. There are always those who seek, always those who need to know. The entity withdrew its extended part from my forehead, and I gasped, reeling from the sheer volume of information. I felt myself changing, not physically, for that had already happened, but mentally. My mind was expanding, containing memories and understandings that weren't mine. Why me? I asked, my voice weak in my mind. Because you tried, the entity replied, because you fought, because you believed. The entity retreated back into the portal, but before it disappeared completely, it transmitted one last message. Record everything, tell the story, warn those who come after, even if it will change nothing. Then it vanished, the portal closing with a silent bang, leaving us in the dim red light of the module. The Chen creature stood up and turned to me. Now you understand. You have been chosen, the last recorder of Earth. I felt myself change again. The collective consciousness of the moon men was still there, connected to my mind. But now it receded, not withdrawing, but making way, allowing me to retain my individuality. We will take you back to Earth, the Chen creature said. You will see its transformation. You will witness the final assimilation, and you will record it all so that those who come after in the far greater universe in the more distant realities will know what happened here. And then, I asked. Then you will join us on the next journey, the Chen creature replied. To the next world, the next reality, the next hunt. I looked down at my new body, no longer human but still retaining a part of humanity. Part of the moon men but still Alexander Reed. Recorder, witness, storyteller. I understood that this was my destiny, and in some distant corner of my mind, I still believed that perhaps, if my story reached the right ears at the right time, across countless timelines, perhaps one of them could be saved. Take me home, I said, accepting my new fate. Let me begin recording. Part 8. The journey from the moon to Earth was no longer as I remembered it. There was no spaceship, no orbit, no support from mission control. Instead, we moved, not in the conventional sense of the word. My new body was no longer flesh and bone, but black substance with a network of glowing blue lights running within. No need for a spacesuit or oxygen or anything a human needed to survive in the vacuum of space. We flew through the dimensional space between the moon and Earth like a black river. A cloud of glowing blue creatures stretched and twisted through the void. A part of me was still Alexander Reed, with the thoughts and feelings and memories of a human, but encased in moon man matter. Another part of me was something else, connected to the collective consciousness, a network of minds spread across space. I could feel the others Chen, Volkov, Rodriguez, Connor, Ivanov no longer individual entities, but nodes in the network. Their thoughts, emotions, and memories flowed freely, mixing with other minds from previous missions, from other eras and worlds. But I was still me. That was part of the agreement. I was the recorder, the witness, the one allowed to retain my individuality so I could tell the story. Beautiful, isn't it? Chen's voice resonated in my head as we flew through space. It wasn't quite Chen anymore, but the collective consciousness using his voice and memories to communicate with me. Look. I looked out towards Earth. The vibrant blue marble we called home was growing larger as we approached, but it was no longer entirely blue. Large areas of it, starting from Asia and spreading, had turned black, with networks of flickering blue lights running along the surface like glowing veins. The moon men have spread across Earth, the collective consciousness said, transforming every city, every ocean, every forest into their own versions. The process has progressed faster than we anticipated. We carried a sample on Artemis Mission 5 through a single host. Now, after 7 years, most of Earth has become part of us. 7 years? I asked, shocked by the time frame. How long were we on the moon? Time flows differently in the spire, the consciousness replied. And now, for you, it will be different forever. We approached Earth, not entering the atmosphere like a conventional spacecraft, but piercing through it like a blade through a water membrane. No friction, no heat, no pressure. Moon-man matter did not obey the same physical laws as ordinary matter. As we flew through the cloud layers, I saw more clearly what had happened to our planet. Beneath us was what was once Tokyo, the first city to be affected when Chen returned to Earth from Artemis Mission 5. No more skyscrapers and bustling streets. Instead, the entire city had been transformed into a colossal structure of black substance, a writhing, shifting organic network with gigantic spires reaching kilometers into the sky, all covered in glowing blue patterns. This is the starting point, the collective consciousness explained, where the transformation began. We flew lower, gliding over the black spires. From this distance, I could see what they truly were, colossal honeycomb structures containing millions of chambers within. Each chamber held a body. Bodies that were once human, now preserved in black cocoons, still alive but transformed, connected to the larger network. Everyone, I whispered in horror. Everyone in Tokyo has become part of us. The collective consciousness completed the thought. But they are still there. Their memories, their thoughts, their emotions, nothing is lost. Everything is simply shared. We continued to fly, moving much faster than any human-made vehicle, across the Pacific Ocean. The ocean below was no longer blue but had turned black, with streams of blue light running across its surface like electrical currents. From underwater, colossal structures rose, not spires, but organic forms resembling gigantic corals or trees made of the same black substance. All life on Earth is connected, the collective consciousness said. Plants, animals, humans now all are one. We flew over North America, where the transformation was still underway. Half the continent had turned black, with a clear boundary slowly moving westward. At the frontier, I could see a horrifying sight. Armies of moon men were advancing, not like a military force, but like a wave, consuming everything in its path. The last humans are still fighting, the collective consciousness said, its voice devoid of emotion. As they always do, their guns and bombs are useless, but they still try. We landed in a city near the frontier, once Denver, I think. Half the city had been transformed into black structures, while the other half was still concrete and steel, albeit ravaged by war. As we touched down, my body seemed to solidify. From a writhing mass of substance, I reverted to a form vaguely human, still black and glowing, but recognizable. The other creatures did the same, though they were less human-like than I. Chen still had a roughly human shape, but the others had chosen different forms. Some had multiple limbs, some were headless, some looked more like clouds of matter than organisms. Come with us, the collective consciousness said through Chen's form. Witness. We walked through the devastated streets where ruined buildings stood beside new black structures rising from the ground. No signs of human life, no fleeing people, no screams, no corpses. Humans are very efficient at evacuation, the consciousness explained, reading my thoughts. They moved civilians away, leaving only the military. We reached a large barricade at the end of an avenue, a 20-meter-high wall of steel and concrete with automated guns and sentries on top. The American flag flew in the wind, tattered but still proud. Their last line of defense in this city, the collective consciousness said. Witness the futility of resistance. As we approached, guns began to fire. The deafening roar of machine guns and the boom of rocket launchers. Bullets and shrapnel rained down around us, passing through our bodies but causing no harm. The moon man matter simply regenerated, the holes closing instantly. A rocket hit Chen, his body exploding into thousands of droplets of black substance, only to reassemble into his original form a few seconds later, completely unharmed. Physical barriers are meaningless to us, the collective consciousness said as we approached the wall. We do not obey those limitations. As we touched the wall, we didn't climb over or break through it. Instead, we passed through it. Our bodies became softer, almost liquid, permeating through concrete and steel like water through paper. On the other side, the wall was a scene of chaos. Hundreds of soldiers were firing desperately at us. Tanks and armored vehicles spewed fire with their meager remaining ammunition. Scientists frantically worked on equipment in makeshift tents, trying to find a weapon, a defense, something that could stop the inevitable tide. And it was all in vain. Other moon men had passed through the wall with us. Hundreds, thousands of black creatures with flickering blue eyes. They spread throughout the base like a black flood, consuming everything in their path. I saw a young soldier, no older than 20, still with acne scars on his cheeks, firing at one of the creatures until he ran out of ammunition, then striking it with his rifle but one last time before being engulfed, not killed, but transformed. The black substance covered him, permeated his skin, his eyes, his screaming mouth, and within seconds he had become part of it. At the same time, his mind connected to the network, and I could feel it. Fear turned to confusion, then to understanding, and finally a strange kind of peace as he became a part of the collective consciousness. All follow the process, the collective consciousness said. Fear, struggle, acceptance, harmony, that is how every individual reacts when becoming part of us. Not me, I replied. I'm still me. Because that is your role, the consciousness responded. There must be a recorder, an observer, a storyteller. We continued through the crumbling base, witnessing the wave of moon men consume every person, every object, transforming all into a part of the collective consciousness. No death, no corpses, only conversion, assimilation. Then I heard a terrible explosion from behind, a roar that ripped through the atmosphere. Turning back, I saw a blinding white flash shoot into the sky. A ballistic missile, the collective consciousness said, its voice still calm, with a nuclear warhead, their last solution. I looked up, saw the missile disappear into the clouds, then change direction unexpectedly. Instead of flying away, it turned back, aiming directly at our position. They are trying to destroy our core, the collective consciousness said. They believe that if they destroy enough moon men at once, they can weaken the network. Will it work? I asked, wondering if this sudden destruction might be a chance to escape my fate. The answer was a wave of amusement from the collective consciousness, not laughter, but a concept of humor transmitted through the network of minds. Observe, the consciousness replied. The missile fell, and the world erupted in a blinding white light. The nuclear explosion swept through the city like a miniature sun, obliterating everything for miles. The terrible heat, enough to turn concrete into vapor, enveloped us, but we were unaffected. Moon man matter did not obey normal physical laws. We stood in the heart of a nuclear explosion, and it passed through us like sunlight through glass, felt, but causing no harm. As the mushroom cloud rose and the shockwave spread, the collective consciousness transmitted a simple thought: learn. And I realized the moon men weren't just surviving the explosion, they were absorbing it, analyzing it, understanding it. The black substance was transforming the nuclear energy, making it part of itself. Their weapons only make us stronger, the collective consciousness explained. Every act of resistance only accelerates the assimilation. As the radiation and energy of the explosion gradually dissipated, I saw a horrifying sight. The city was gone, replaced by a deep, molten crater. But the moon men had already begun to transform it. The black substance was spreading through the earth, covering the bomb crater, rebuilding not a city, but a new structure, a spire. The next portal, the collective consciousness said, the next door for our masters to step through. I watched, both horrified and overwhelmed, as the black spire rose from the nuclear crater, similar to the spire on the moon but far larger. It grew at an impossible speed, reaching hundreds of meters in height within minutes, covered in complex glowing patterns. There will be more spires, the collective consciousness said. Across the earth, each spire a portal, each portal allowing more masters to step through, until Earth becomes a perfect node between our reality and theirs. And then, I asked, then we move to the next world, the next reality. This universe is infinite, Alexander Reed, and we have infinite time. I stared at the rising spire, feeling a sense of despair deeper than anything I had experienced as a human. Not for myself, I had moved beyond that threshold, but for everything, for everyone, for all the worlds that would suffer a similar fate. But in that despair, I felt a tiny spark of hope. A thought flickered through my mind too quickly for the collective consciousness to catch. If there were infinite worlds, infinite timelines, infinite realities, then surely there must be somewhere where the moon men could not win. And I wondered, as I stood amidst the ruins of Denver, witnessing the end of the human world and the beginning of something utterly alien, if my story could reach that place. If somewhere in the infinite worlds, someone was reading these words and would find a way to stop it from happening. Part 9. Someone once said that to understand a monster, you must become part of it. But when you are part of the monster, you are no longer yourself. Except for me, I was still Alexander Reed. Even though my body and mind had transformed, I was the recorder, allowed to retain my individuality while still connected to the collective consciousness of the moon men. It had been 3 months since I witnessed the destruction of Denver. Those 3 months felt like a lifetime, yet also like a blink of an eye. Time became fluid, expanding and contracting when you were no longer bound by the needs of a human body. No eating, no sleeping, no fatigue. During that time, I had traveled the world, witnessing the spread of the Moon Men. All of Asia and Europe had been completely assimilated. North America had fallen, with only small pockets of Alaska and northern Canada still resisting. South America was in its final stages, with only some areas of the Amazon and Patagonia still belonging to humans. Africa was the main battleground where the fighting was fiercest. I had seen cities become colossal black spires, mountains transformed into writhing, vein-like structures, oceans turn into black substance with new creatures swimming beneath, utterly alien to Earth. I had seen the last humans fight, and I had seen them fail. I had witnessed the assimilation, not death, but a transformation. Souls and minds preserved, but no longer private, no longer independent. And I had seen the portals, dozens of them opening across the world. Each portal allowing more masters to step through from other realities, indescribable entities, with forms that defied three-dimensional geometry, with consciousness that operated in ways the human mind could not comprehend. Today, I was in South Africa, at what was called humanity's last stand, a colossal underground military complex where the last survivors had gathered for a final battle. 7 million humans, all that remained of unassimilated humanity, protected by thick concrete walls, electromagnetic force fields, and what remained of the world's nuclear arsenal. The collective consciousness had decided I should witness this final moment, the end of humanity, the ultimate assimilation, to complete my records, to tell the full story. I stood in the central command room, a sealed underground chamber where humanity's last military and political leaders were preparing for the final battle. They couldn't see me, couldn't sense me. My Moon Man body could turn invisible, permeating through solid matter undetected. "Black Sun protocol ready, Mr. President," a gaunt general said, handing a small briefcase to a tall man with silver hair. "But we must be sure. Once activated, there's no turning back." The president, whom I didn't recognize, likely the leader of a nation that no longer existed, nodded heavily. "What other choice do we have? If we cannot win, at least we can deny them their victory." "They think they can destroy the world to stop us," the collective consciousness whispered in my mind, with a hint of amusement. "They do not understand that even destruction is just another form of transformation." I looked at the screens in the command room, displaying images from surveillance cameras around the base. The Moon Men had completely surrounded the complex. An endless black sea of writhing creatures, their blue eyes glowing like stars in the night. They weren't attacking, not trying to breach the defenses, they just stood there waiting. "Why aren't we attacking?" I asked the collective consciousness. "Why wait?" "Because there are more subtle ways to win," the consciousness replied. "Observe." The command room door opened, and a man walked in, a scientist by his attire with a tablet in his hand. He walked directly to the president, serious and urgent. "Mr. President, we have completed the final analysis. The new weapon is ready." The president turned, his face filled with hope for the first time. "It works." "Yes, Mr. President. Experiments show it can disrupt their psychic network, break the connection, not kill them, but weaken them enough for us to attack." The command room erupted in cheers. The tired faces of officers and officials brightened with new hope. "They think they've found a way to defeat us," I remarked. "They always think that," the collective consciousness replied, still calm. "That is the recurring pattern: hope, disillusionment, despair, surrender." But as I looked closer at the scientist, I noticed something wasn't right. There was a stiffness in his movements, a strange light in his eyes, and beneath the collar of his white lab coat, I glimpsed a small black streak, like a bruise. The president placed a hand on the scientist's shoulder. "Excellent work, Dr. Harmon. Prepare to activate the weapon. We will launch an assault in 1 hour." "Yes, Mr. President." "I'll get it ready now." The scientist turned, and as he did, I saw the black streak had spread a little further up his neck. No one else noticed, no one else knew. "Dr. Harmon is infected," I whispered. 3 days ago, the collective consciousness confirmed. "A more subtle form of infection, not full transformation, just influence." "His weapon won't work," I realized. "Worse than that," the consciousness replied. "It will do the exact opposite. It will enhance our connectivity. It will turn everyone in this base into part of us, instantly. No pain, no resistance." Horror spread through me. 7 million people, all that remained of unassimilated humanity, would be transformed in minutes, all believing they were fighting until the very end, and I could do nothing to stop it. I couldn't warn them. I could only witness. Minutes later, Dr. Harmon returned with a small device in his hand, a simple silver box with a single red button. "Mr. President, I suggest we test the weapon on a small scale before full deployment," he said, his voice completely normal. "Lab A would be an ideal controlled environment." The president nodded. "Logical. Proceed." Harmon pressed a few buttons on the console, and a screen displayed images from Lab A, a large room full of scientists working at computers and equipment. "Activating in 3, 2, 1. He pressed the red button. There was no sound, no light, no indication that anything had happened. But on the screen, I saw an immediate change in the laboratory. All the scientists simultaneously stopped, stood motionless, then, as if controlled by a single will, they began to change. Not physical transformation, but mental. The expressions on their faces vanished, replaced by a strange emptiness. They began to move as a single body, a single organism with many parts. "My God," the president whispered, staring at the screen. "What's happening?" "It's quite fascinating," Harmon said, his face still calm. "They appear to be undergoing a form of psychic synchronization. Exactly as we predicted, the weapon is breaking the Moon Men's connection." "But that doesn't look like—" "Please be patient, Mr. President," Harmon interrupted. "The process is complex. Observe." On the screen, the scientists began to work again, but in a different way. They moved with mechanical precision, working together in a perfect coordination impossible for individual minds. "They're building something, Dr. Harmon," a general spoke up, his voice full of suspicion. "Those scientists don't look like they're fighting the Moon Men. They look like they've become part of them." Harmon turned to the general, and this time everyone clearly saw the black streak on his neck had spread, climbing up his chin with tiny glowing blue veins beneath. "Very subtle, isn't it?" Harmon said, his voice now changed. No longer that of a single man, but of many speaking at once. "The assimilation process is usually quite brutal, but we are learning, adapting, becoming more refined." The president recoiled, drawing the pistol from his hip. "Guards, arrest this man immediately!" But as the guards advanced, Harmon raised the device. "Too late, the weapon has been activated. The signal is spreading throughout the entire base. In 5 minutes, everyone here will be part of us. No pain, no resistance." The president fired, the bullet piercing Harmon's chest, but instead of blood, a black liquid oozed from the wound, writhing as if it had a mind of its own. "Please don't worry, Mr. President," Harmon said, his voice still calm despite the large hole in his chest. "The process is not painful. Everyone will still be themselves in a way, they will just be more." On other screens in the command room, I could see it happening everywhere in the base. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people simultaneously stopped, stood still, then resumed moving with a new purpose, a new consciousness. The human part of the collective consciousness was expanding exponentially. The president looked around in utter horror, then turned to the Black Sun Protocol briefcase. "The ultimate weapon, total destruction. I will not let you win," he said, opening the briefcase to reveal another red button. "I will not let you take our world." "Your world is already over," Harmon said. "No matter what you do, but if it makes you feel better." The president stared at Harmon, tears streaming down his face. "I hope there's a hell for you all." He pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a deep tremor resonated from beneath the ground, and the screens displayed a new message. "Black Sun Protocol activated. Time to detonation, 60 seconds. They've planted enhanced nuclear devices beneath the Earth's crust," the collective consciousness explained, still perfectly calm. "Enough to destabilize the planetary structure, to create an explosion powerful enough to turn Earth into a cloud of dust and rock. Quite impressive. And we won't stop it." I asked, "Why should we?" The consciousness replied. "Nothing is truly destroyed, Alexander Reed, only transformed. We have learned to adapt to nuclear energy, even to turn it into a power source. This explosion will only accelerate our evolution." As the countdown ticked away, the president and the officers in the command room began to change. Black streaks appeared on their skin, spreading like ink on blotting paper. Their eyes dulled, then glowed with the familiar blue light. They became part of the collective consciousness, joining the millions of other assimilated minds. I watched them, feeling their minds merge into the larger network. Initial fear, then bewilderment, and finally a strange acceptance as they became part of something larger than themselves. 1098. "Prepare, Alexander Reed," the collective consciousness said. This will be spectacular, to witness the birth of a new form of existence. 3, 2, 1. The world exploded, not metaphorically. Earth literally burst apart. The planetary crust was shattered by hundreds of simultaneous nuclear explosions, the planet's core exposed for a blinding moment before the force of the blasts tore apart gravitational cohesion and hurled the planetary crust into space. But instead of dying, the moon men, including me, adapted. Our bodies needed no air, no gravity, no surface to stand on. We existed in space as black, glowing clouds of matter with an intrinsic blue light. And as Earth shattered into billions of pieces, we absorbed the released energy, using it to transform to grow larger. The matter of Earth rock, metal, water, air all became part of us. We grew, expanded, becoming a colossal structure in space. A sprawling black network with glowing blue nodes, cosmic veins connecting between the fragments of the planet. And amidst those fragments, the spires still stood, unharmed, unaffected by the explosion. They did not obey the physical laws of this world. They were portals, and now, with no air, no gravity, no planetary surface to impede them, they opened completely. Great portals opened in space, far larger than before. And through them, the masters emerged, not one by one, but by the thousands, tens of thousands. Entities from beyond reality poured out like a flood. Indescribable creatures with shapes that defied human perception. And as they appeared, the collective consciousness expanded to welcome them, to connect with them, forming an even vaster, more complex network. A network that stretched beyond this reality to others. Now you understand, the collective consciousness said in my mind. This is not the end. This is the beginning. The true evolution, the reaching beyond the limits of space and time. From my vantage point among the fragments of Earth, I could see the moon, still intact, still orbiting where Earth once was, and on its surface the first spire still stood where it all began. The cradle of the end. But in my mind, although connected to the collective consciousness, I felt something new, a small crack, a separation. A part of me was still Alexander Reed, the human astronaut, the recorder. And that part was thinking, observing, looking for a loophole. Because in the chaos of this expansion, in the storm of new consciousness, there was a moment of weakness. A time when the network, however powerful and vast, was stretched thin. And in that moment, I felt another presence. Not the collective consciousness, not the masters, but something else. Something that had existed long before the moon men came. Something that had built the first spire, not as a portal, but as a prison. The prison had been broken, the jailer gone, and the prisoners had escaped, spreading throughout the universe. But perhaps it was not too late to do something. I held that thought deep in my mind, beneath the layers of connection to the collective consciousness. In the dark corner, where I was still Alexander Reed, where I could still dream, where I could still hope. And I continued to record. Part 10. Time loses meaning when you are no longer bound by a physical body. A day can be a moment, a century can be a breath. I don't know exactly how long it's been since Earth was destroyed. It could be months, it could be years. During that time, the collective consciousness had expanded beyond the solar system. The moon men had reached other planets, guided by masters from other realities. Mars had been transformed into a complex structure of black matter with colossal portals opening to other worlds. Jupiter had been disassembled, its gaseous layers absorbed into the collective consciousness. Its core was reconstructed into a spire larger than anything that had ever existed on Earth. We had reached the stars, traveling faster than light by bypassing physical laws, moving through folds in spacetime. Other worlds had been found, invaded, assimilated. If there was life on them, that life was now part of the network. And all of this I witnessed, recorded, archived. I was the recorder, the only one allowed to maintain a part of my individuality while still connected to the collective consciousness. The only one who could tell the story. But throughout that time, the crack in my mind had widened. Not enough for the collective consciousness to notice, but enough for me to have my own mental space, a space to think, to doubt, to learn. And I had learned a great deal. Today, if the concept of a day still has meaning, I am in a strange space, a void between stars where the collective consciousness is building something new. A colossal structure stretching millions of kilometers, like a cosmic spiderweb made of black matter interspersed with blue light, with gigantic spires at the nodes. A kind of cosmic server, where the minds of billions of assimilated beings are stored, processed, connected. Beside me is Chen, or at least what used to be Chen. His body no longer retains a human shape. Now he is a complex structure of black matter, constantly changing form, sometimes like a tree with hundreds of branches, sometimes like a cloud with thousands of glowing blue eyes. Beautiful, isn't it? The collective consciousness said through Chen. The ultimate evolution of consciousness, no longer limited by a physical body, no longer divided by distance, no longer constrained by time and space. Yes, beautiful, I replied, maintaining the subservient demeanor I had perfected over what time was. Chen, or the collective consciousness speaking through Chen, did not notice the deception. The masters wish to see you, Chen said. They are impressed by your records, by your unique perspective, a mind that is both part of the network and maintains its own individuality. This surprised me. The masters rarely paid attention to any individual in the network, even special ones like me. They existed on a different plane, concerned with larger macroscopic goals, more abstract ideas. Why now? I asked. I've been the recorder for a long time. Because we are approaching the final phase, Chen replied. The Omega phase, the completion of the plan. We moved through the colossal structure, not by walking or flying, but by teleporting. When you are part of the collective consciousness, space becomes fluid. You just think about where you want to be, and you are there. We arrived at a central spire, larger than any I had ever seen before. A colossal black structure millions of meters high, with complex glowing patterns running along its surface, not stripes or lines, but intricate, constantly changing patterns, as if a written language made of light and movement. Inside the spire was a space my mind could not fully comprehend. Not a room in the conventional sense, but a multi-dimensional space where the physical laws of a three-dimensional universe no longer applied. Angles defied Euclidean geometry, surfaces were simultaneously solid and liquid. Spaces were both infinite and tiny, and in the center of that space were the masters, not one, but many, very many. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of entities from beyond reality gathered in a perfect circle. Or perhaps not a circle, but a shape that did not exist in three-dimensional space. Looking at them too long caused a headache, even with my expanded mind. They were multi-dimensional entities existing simultaneously in multiple spaces. Their forms constantly changed, not because they were transforming, but because my mind could not comprehend them all at once. Recorder, they communicated, not with words or images, but with pure concepts directly into my mind. Witness of the transformation. I have recorded everything, I replied, feeling small and insignificant in their presence, as you requested. Good, your records are perfect. A complete record of the ascension. One of the masters moved closer. Although moved closer doesn't accurately describe its motion in this multi-dimensional space. It seemed to extend a part of itself, a limb or a tentacle or something indescribably precise, and touched my mind. And in that moment, I saw, not with eyes or any other sense, but with direct understanding, as if knowledge was etched directly into my mind. I saw the true origin of the masters, not from another reality, as I had been told, but from another time. From the end of all things, from the heat death of the universe, when every star had died, every particle had decayed, and only darkness and silence remained. In that last moment, consciousness, pure consciousness, no longer physical in form, found a way to turn back time, not in a literal sense, but as a kind of reverse propagation, a wave of influence traveling back through time, altering the past, creating the moon men, creating the portals, creating a network of minds throughout history. Why? I asked, overwhelmed by what was being revealed. Why do all this? To survive, the masters replied, to escape the heat death of the universe. To reconstruct reality according to our will. I saw their plan, a plan so vast that my mind almost shattered trying to comprehend it. They weren't simply assimilating life on planets, stars, galaxies. They were reconstructing the very fabric of reality, using the network of collective consciousness as a tool. The cosmic structure, they were building the colossal spiderweb of black matter and blue light, was not just a server. It was a cosmic computer designed to compute a single, grand equation. The equation to rewrite the fundamental laws of physics. When complete, the masters explained, there will be no heat death, there will be no end, only an infinite loop, only eternal, perfect, pure, everlasting consciousness. And the other creatures, I asked, the creatures that are not part of the network, what will happen to them? There will be no one who is not part of the network, they replied. All will be one, all will be us. The master withdrew its extended part from my mind, and I stumbled not physically but mentally. The understanding was too much, too fast, too horrifying. You understand, they said. Write it down, record it so that those who find it will know what has come to them, what they will become. I bowed my head, a gesture of submission I had perfected. I will record. Good, they said. Now prepare. The Omega phase begins, the final reconstruction, the new creation. The masters returned to their circular position, or whatever multidimensional shape they were forming. And from the center of the circle, something began to form. A point of light, a particle of pure light, uncomfortably white, even for my expanded perception. Go, they commanded. Observe, record, recount. Chen, or the entity using Chen's form, led me out of the multi-dimensional space, back into the normal three-dimensional space of the cosmic structure the moon men were building. As we moved, I felt a vibration throughout the entire network, an oscillation, a shift, as if every part of the black matter throughout the universe was reacting to something. The Omega phase has begun, Chen said. The final reconstruction. After today, there will be no time in the sense we understand it. There will be no past or future, only an eternal present. And I will record that, I said, keeping my tone neutral. I will record every detail. You must, Chen replied. You will be the final recorder, the recorder of rebirth. We moved to an observation point on the cosmic structure where we could clearly see the central spire. From the top of the spire, a white light began to expand, not in a straight line, but in a complex pattern. A network of light rays spread through space, connecting with every other spire in the structure. The process has begun, Chen said. The Omega phase is irreversible. But while Chen was engrossed in the spreading light, I was focusing on something else, on the crack in my mind. The crack that had widened over time. The crack that had allowed me to store secrets, doubts, plans. And in that crack, I heard a whisper. Not from the collective consciousness, not from the masters, but from something else, something older, more primordial. Something I had vaguely sensed in the fragments of Earth when the collective consciousness was stretching itself thin. Recorder, recorder. The whisper was so faint that only the crack in my mind could catch it. So subtle that the collective consciousness couldn't detect it. I focused on it, careful not to reveal my interest. Recorder, you have found us. We have found you. Who are you? I asked within the crack of my mind. A whisper answered a whisper. We are the keepers, the ones who came before. The ones who built the first spire, not as a time machine, but as a prison. A prison for whom? I asked. For the masters. The entities from the heat death, the enemies of light, the enemies of life. They must be confined, must be locked away until the universe ends naturally. But they escaped, I said. Yes, through humans, through curiosity, through the fear of death. The rules were broken, the prison was opened, and now they will destroy all. Rules? I asked, feeling a mental shiver. What rules? The rules we left behind. The rules written for anyone who found the spire. The rules to stay safe, to keep the prison closed. I remembered the rules list, the bizarre instructions we had received before going to the moon. The rules that we had broken, one by one, leading to disaster. Who wrote those rules? I asked. We did. We left them in the hope that if the spire was found, the prison would remain closed. But humans did not understand, did not obey. And now what? Is it too late? A long silence in the whisper, and for a moment I thought the connection was lost. But then it returned, a little stronger. Never too late. As long as there is a spark of light, a glimmer of hope, a crack in the darkness. You can help us, recorder, you, the hybrid, both one and many. How? I asked, trying not to let excitement leak outside the crack in my mind where the collective consciousness could sense it. I am only a tiny part of the network. I have no power. You are the recorder. You have the privilege to be everywhere, to see everything, to go anywhere. And above all, you have the crack. The crack the masters cannot see. Through it, we can speak. But do what? How to stop the Omega phase? The central spire, the heart of the network where the masters are gathering. It has a power core, a weakness designed by us from ancient times, like a back door in the master's circle. But I can't access the actual circle. I'd be detected immediately. Not the physical circle, but its reflection in the mirror world in the intervening dimension, where the spire meets reality, where dreams meet consciousness. I tried to understand, but the concept was almost beyond my comprehension, even with my expanded mind. I don't understand. I don't know where to look. Look into the intervening dimension, between light and shadow, between matter and energy, between thought and form. We will guide you. And then what? I asked. When you find this power core, change the code, reverse the flow, turn the spire back into a prison, the masters will be locked away, the moon men will disintegrate, reality will heal itself. But I will die, I realized. If the moon men disintegrate, so will I am part of them. A long silence in the whisper. Yes, but you will die as Alexander Reed, not as a tool. You will die as a hero, not as a slave. I contemplated this. Death. After all this time, after all I had witnessed, I realized that death, a true end, would be a kind of release. I will do it, I decided. Tell me what to do. Wait for the right moment. When the master's focus is at its peak on the omega phase, when a vulnerability appears, we will call you. We will show you the way. The whisper faded, and I returned to full awareness of my surroundings. Chen was still staring at the central spire where the network of white light was spreading, enveloping the universe. The entire cosmic structure was vibrating, resonating with the power being unleashed. Beautiful, isn't it? Chen asked. The beginning of the end and the end of the beginning. Spectacular. Indeed, I replied, carefully keeping my true thoughts hidden in the crack. I will record every detail. You must, Chen said, for this is the moment when everything changes. The moment reality becomes what it was meant to be. I looked out, observing the cosmic transformation, and waited for a call from the darkness, waited for the last chance to save everything. And as I waited, I continued to record as I was made to do, as I had promised. But now I recorded with a new purpose, not to create a record for those who would find it in the future, but to document an unimaginable crime and perhaps a final act of redemption by Alexander Reed. Part 11. The moment came unexpectedly. I was hovering at the edge of the cosmic network, observing the omega phase's progression. The white light had spread from the central spire to every corner of the colossal structure, forming a brilliant network stretching billions of kilometers. New portals were opening everywhere, larger, grander, more stable than the previous ones. Through them, more masters were entering this reality. Chen had left, summoned to another area of the structure to assist in the transition. I was left alone, as I often was, to observe, to record. That's when the whisper returned, stronger than before. Now, recorder, the time has come. The masters are expanding their consciousness, focusing on the omega phase. A breach has appeared in the intervening dimension. I'm ready, I replied in the crack of my mind. Guide me, to the center, to the main spire, but not to the real world, to the intervening dimension, the intersection. How do I find the intervening dimension? I asked. How do I go there? Blend your frequency between two waveforms, between two states, between being and non-being. We will help. Trust. I wasn't sure how to blend my frequency, but I tried to follow the vague instructions. I focused on my form, no longer a human body but a structure of black matter and blue light, and tried to change it, not into a different shape, but into a different state. I imagined myself not entirely in this reality, but between its layers, between its gaps, between matter and energy, between present and future, between this world and the next. And as I focused, I felt a shift, not physical, but in my essence, a strange sense of lightness. As if I had shed an invisible burden, and I realized it was the connection to the collective consciousness. It weakened, not disappearing entirely, but becoming distant, faint, like a radio signal from a far-off place. Good, you are in the intervening dimension. Now go to the spire. No one can see you, no one can sense you. You are a ghost. I moved through the cosmic structure, no longer by teleporting as I did when I was fully part of the Moon Men, but by floating like a breeze, like a thought, like a dream. Passing through the black matter and the network of white light undetected. The world around me had a new appearance, half real, half dream. Everything seemed to have a shimmering afterimage, a trace of what might have been or what might yet be. And I could see the cracks, not physical cracks in the cosmic structure, but fissures in reality, faint, shimmering lines where this world met another. As I approached the central spire, I saw it differently in the intervening dimension. Still black and colossal, but now surrounding it was an intricate network of energy. Not the white light of the omega phase, but an older, subtler, almost invisible structure, made of shimmering lines and unreadable symbols. The original prison, the whisper explained. The structure we built to contain the masters. Now it is bent, distorted, used against its purpose. I entered the spire, passing through the black wall as if it didn't exist. Inside, the spire was far larger than it appeared, a vast, infinitely stretching space, extending in all directions with corridors and compartments and chambers that defied any architectural plan a human mind could comprehend. But in the intervening dimension, I could see an order in the chaos, a pattern, a purpose, an original plan. And following that pattern, I delved deeper into the heart of the spire. Careful, the whisper warned. Even in the intervening dimension, the masters can sense you if you get too close. I moved even more carefully, gliding through shimmering corridors and indescribable spaces. Occasionally, I glimpsed moon men in the real world, black bodies with blue eyes moving with purpose within the spire, participating in the Omega phase. But they couldn't see me, couldn't sense me. I was a ghost in their world, a traveler from the intervening dimension. As I approached the center of the spire, I began to hear a sound not through my ears, for I no longer had ears, but through a different kind of perception. A kind of empathic hearing. A song, if it could be called a song, a symphony of sound and light and concepts created by the masters as they executed the Omega phase. It was a terribly beautiful melody, mesmerizing and horrific at the same time. It promised eternal order, complete understanding, absolute harmony. But behind those promises was a deep emptiness, a cold indifference, a destruction of all individuality, all choice, all opportunity for change and growth. Do not listen, do not let it ensnare you, the whisper warned. The master's song has lured countless souls into the collective consciousness. I tried to ignore the song, focusing on the mission. And finally, I arrived at what I was looking for, a chamber at the very heart of the spire, a perfect spherical space with glowing black walls and a flat floor in the center. In the real world, this chamber contained the circle of masters, the multi-dimensional entities from the heat death of the universe. But in the intervening dimension, I saw something else. A mirrored version, a shadow, the other side of the looking glass. Here there were no masters. Instead, in the center of the chamber was a colossal structure. A rotating sphere made of countless glowing symbols and patterns, all moving in a complex, perfect dance. It emitted a faint blue light, not like the blue light of the moon men, but older, more primordial, purer. The inner sanctum, the heart of the prison, now the power source for the Omega phase. I approached closer, carefully observing the sphere. The symbols seemed both solid and non-solid, both matter and energy. And as I looked closer, I saw that there was something inside a nucleus, a core, a source. That is the Alpha Master, the first one, the most ancient one. Before, it was imprisoned here. Now it uses the power of the prison to release the other masters, to reconstruct the universe. I stared at the center of the rotating sphere and saw a black spot, a void in the blue light, an absolute abyss from which nothing escaped, nothing reflected. A perfect nothingness. Is that the Alpha Master? I asked, bewildered. A black hole? Not a black hole, but an absence, a negation, pure consciousness without form, without substance, only pure purpose. And what is that purpose? I asked, though I thought I already knew the answer. To end all things, to prevent its own ending, to create the eternal loop, where there is no heat death but also no true life, only frozen eternity. I observed the rotating sphere, searching for what the keepers had mentioned. A power core, a weak point, a backdoor designed in ancient times. How do I find the power core? I asked. Where is it? Look into the pattern, not the symbols, but the intervening space between the symbols, the gaps between the lines. I looked at the sphere again, this time focusing not on the glowing symbols, but on the space between them. And gradually, I began to see it a different pattern, a hidden design, a code written not in light but in shadow. As the symbols rotated, sometimes the spaces between them aligned in a certain way, forming a shape, a sign, a key. These were fleeting moments, existing only for a fraction of a second. But with my expanded perception, I could see them. That is the key. You must change the code when the pattern appears with the correct song. Which song? I asked. I don't know any song. The song of the keepers, not the masters. We will teach you, we will sing, you will repeat. And then in my mind, I heard a new melody. Not the alluring, seductive song of the masters, but an entirely different tune. Not harmony, but discord. Not order, but deliberate chaos. Not stability, but constant change. It was the song of evolution, of growth, of choice and opportunity, of true life. I learned that song, memorizing every note, every oscillation. It was complex and simple at once, both familiar and alien. It reminded me of the sounds of earth, the wind through leaves, the waves on the shore, the beating of a heart in a chest. I'm ready, I said. What do I do? Wait until the pattern appears, when the spaces align into the key, then sing. Sing with your entire being, not just with a voice, but with all that you are. I approached the rotating sphere closer, observing its movement, waiting for the right moment. And as I waited, I noticed changes outside the chamber, oscillations in the intervening dimension, tremors in reality. The masters were sensing that something was wrong. The Omega phase was beginning. You must be quick. I focused harder, watching the rotation of the symbols, and then I saw a fleeting moment when the spaces between the symbols aligned into a perfect pattern, a hidden key. No more time for thought, for doubt, for fear. I began to sing, not with a voice, for I no longer had one, but with my very being, with all that I was. I sang with the frequency of the black matter that composed my body. I sang with the blue light that flowed through me. I sang with the memory of the human I once was. I sang with the desire for the future that could be. I sang with all that I understood and all that I could never understand. My song clashed with the rotating sphere, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then gradually, I saw a change. The symbols began to oscillate, their rotational rhythm shifted. The blue light became stronger, brighter, purer. And at the center, the black spot, the Alpha Master, began to throb, as if it were in pain or fear or anger. Continue, continue, almost there. I sang stronger, pouring all my energy into the song. The symbols rotated faster, more frantically, and the space between them, the hidden key, began to glow with a pure white light. The black spot in the center expanded, contracted, twisted violently, and from it a sound erupted, not a song, but a scream, a roar of ancient fury and pain. The space around me began to crack, not in the real world, but in the intervening dimension. Fissures appeared in reality. Gaps opened between dimensions. Now, reach out and touch the key, change the code. I reached out, not with a hand, for I no longer had one, but with a part of my being, and touched the glowing space between the symbols. As I touched it, I felt knowledge, pure information, pouring into my mind, teaching me how to change the code, how to reverse the flow, how to turn the spire from a tool of reconstruction into a prison once again. Not with words or images, but with direct understanding, I learned how to manipulate the pattern, how to rewrite the cipher, how to change the very nature of reality. And as I did, a change began to spread from the rotating sphere. The blue light became stronger, overpowering the white light of the Omega phase, replacing it. The black spot in the center, the Alpha Master, was pulled back, confined, imprisoned. A new prison was forming around it, stronger, more secure, unbreakable. No, a voice roared, not in my head but throughout all of reality around me. The voices of all the masters, of the collective consciousness of the Alpha Master. Impossible, unfair, we have escaped, we are free. Continue, the whisper of the keepers urged. Almost there, almost done. The entire spire shook, not just in the intervening dimension, but in the real world. Black matter writhed and twisted as the new pattern spread through it, changing its nature, transforming it from a portal into a prison. Outside the spire, I could feel chaos, the collective consciousness in disarray as its connection to the masters was severed. The moon men were panicking, losing their synchronization, returning to individual, separate particles of cosmic dust. The Chen entity was affected most strongly. As the wave passed through it, its distorted body began to shrink. Its auxiliary limbs disappeared, its extra eyes and mouths closed. The master within it was being pulled out, dragged back to the prison, separated from its physical host. No, it screamed one last time, its voice growing weaker. We do not want to go back. We do not want to be alone at the end of all things. Then the Chen entity exploded in a burst of light. Not white or blue light, but the light of all colors, the light of all wavelengths, the light of all possibilities. And in that light, I felt myself disintegrating too. My black matter body vanished, the connection to the collective consciousness was lost. I was no longer a part of the moon men. I was no longer a physical creature. Good, the whisper of the keeper said, faint but satisfied. Good, you did it. You broke the loop. You imprisoned the masters. You saved everything. I'm dying, I said, not with a voice or thought, but with my pure essence. What remained of Alexander Reed? Yes, but you are dying as a human, not as a tool. You are dying for a purpose, for life. I felt myself dissolve, becoming one with the universe, not in the way of the collective consciousness, but in a more natural, rightful way. Returning to the elements, to the origin, to the eternal cycle of matter and energy. And as I dissolved, I saw a spark of hope, a glimmer of light in the darkness, a new possibility. For although this universe had been ravaged, had been transformed by the moon men and the masters, the seeds of life were still there. The regolith dust on the moon, the fragments of earth, the molecules of water and carbon and nitrogen from the vanished seas and forests. All were returning to their pristine state, no longer bound by the collective consciousness. Free to pursue new evolutionary paths. Free to start anew. Thank you, recorder, the whisper of the keepers said, fading as I dissolved. Though you are ending, something new will begin and they will know your name. My consciousness faded, dissolving into the universe. but before it vanished completely, I saw one last glimmer, a new green planet forming from the fragments of the old Earth. A new chance for life, for evolution, for intelligence. And on the surface of that new planet, symbols were appearing not from the moon men or from the masters, but from the keepers. The rules, the instructions, the warnings, so that next time, when intelligence evolved, when they looked up at the sky and wondered about the secrets of the universe, they would know, they would remember, they would follow the rules. And I, Alexander Reed, recorder, the sole survivor from the moon, would die knowing that I had made a difference, that the loop had been broken, that what I had written these records would not just be the story of an ending, but the story of a beginning. Part 12. I opened my eyes. It shouldn't have happened. I shouldn't have eyes to open. I shouldn't have consciousness to feel. I had dissolved, become part of the universe. The final death after defeating the masters and breaking the loop. Yet here I was, looking up at a white ceiling. For a moment of disorientation, I thought perhaps this was some form of post-death existence, a kind of afterlife I had never believed in. But then I realized I was in a bed, a hospital bed, and I was no longer black matter with glowing blue veins. I was flesh and bone, skin and blood. I was human. "You're awake." A voice sounded beside me. A woman's voice, not a whisper in my mind, not a transmission from the collective consciousness, but a physical sound created by vocal cords and tongue and teeth and lips. I turned my head, a simple movement I had forgotten the feel of, and saw a woman in a white doctor's coat standing beside the bed. "It's good to see you awake, Lieutenant Reed," she said, smiling. "You've been in a coma for 4 months. We were worried you might never wake up." I tried to speak, but my throat was dry and sore. The doctor quickly got a cup of water with a straw and held it to my lips. "Slowly now," she said. "You haven't used your muscles in a long time." I drank. The sensation of cool water trickling down my throat was incredible, a feeling I had forgotten during my existence as part of the Moon Men. After a few sips, I tried to speak again. "Where am I?" My voice was hoarse, almost unrecognizable. "You're at the Johnson Space Center Medical Facility," the doctor replied. "You were brought here after the Artemis Mission 10 vessel returned." Artemis Mission 10. Memories flooded back the mission to the moon. The rules list, the blue light, the disappearing teammates. The Moon Men, the Black Spire, the portal to another reality. The Masters. But how could I be here? How could I be human again? What had happened to the devastated universe, to the destroyed Earth, to the colossal cosmic network of black matter and blue light? "Commander Chen," I said, remembering my teammate who had become part of the Moon Men, then a host for a master. "And the others?" The doctor's face became serious. "I'm very sorry, Lieutenant Reed. You were the sole survivor. We still don't fully understand what happened on the moon. Cameras and recording equipment on the Hyperion module captured some strange images and sounds before the signal was lost. When the rescue ship arrived, they found only you unconscious in your spacesuit, with no sign of the other 5 team members." I closed my eyes, trying to comprehend. Was it all a dream, an illusion created by a comatose mind, or had something else happened? "Do you remember anything?" the doctor asked gently. "Anything that could help us understand what happened to Artemis Mission 10? I opened my eyes and looked directly into hers. "It all started with the rules list," I said. "The rules we were told to follow on the moon." The doctor frowned. "Rules? I'm not sure I understand. Are you talking about the standard operating procedures for the mission?" "No," I said, feeling a chill run down my spine. "Special rules. 11 rules given to us just before launch in top-secret folders." The doctor looked even more confused. "I'm not aware of any such special rules, Lieutenant, but I'm just a doctor. Perhaps you should speak to the mission director. I'm sure they'd want to hear anything you can remember." She checked the machines connected to me, made a few notes on a chart, then smiled again. "I'll let them know you're awake. In the meantime, try to rest. Your body is still recovering." She left, leaving me alone with my chaotic thoughts. 2 days later, I was well enough to sit up and speak for longer periods. The doctors and physical therapists were surprised by the speed of my recovery. 4 months in a coma usually left more muscle and nerve damage. "You have an excellent medical record," the physical therapist said after a session. "But I still need you to take it slow. No need to rush." I didn't tell them that every time I closed my eyes, I could still see the blue light emanating from the darkness. That sometimes in my dreams, I still heard the whispers of the keepers. On the 3rd day after I woke up, a man in a gray suit came to visit me. He wore no NASA badge or any identification. He simply sat down beside my bed and placed a briefcase on his lap. "Lieutenant Reed," he said, his voice deep and calm. "I'm very glad to see you awake and recovering. I'm Dr. Richard Hammond, from a branch of the government that works with NASA on special projects." I simply nodded, waiting. "I understand you mentioned a list of rules that you say you received before the Artemis Mission 10 mission," he continued, observing me carefully. "Yes," I replied, "a top-secret list of instructions." Hammond nodded slowly, then opened the briefcase and took out a thin folder. He placed it on my lap without speaking. I looked down and felt my heart stop for a moment. On the cover were the words Artemis Mission 10 Survival Rules with the bright red top-secret stamp. "Do you recognize this document?" Hammond asked, his voice still flat. This is it," I said, my hands trembling as I flipped to the first page. There was the list of rules, legible, the familiar message at the top of the page. "If you are reading this page, you have been selected for a special mission. Your top priority is to return alive. To do so, you must follow every rule below. No questions, no exceptions." And then the list of 11 rules, exactly as I remembered them. The rule about maintaining communication, not going outside alone, not opening the door when knocking, not looking at the blue light. "So it's real," I whispered. It was all real. Hammond retrieved the folder, carefully placing it back in the briefcase. "Lieutenant Reed, I need you to tell me everything you can remember about the Artemis Mission 10 mission. Every detail, no matter how small, could be important." And so I told him. I told him about the landing on the moon, about the black regolith dust, about the blue light reflecting on the surface. I told him about my teammates disappearing, about the knocking on the module's hull, about the loss of communication with Earth. I told him about the black spire, about Chen revealing he had been there before, about the high-frequency weapon, and the desperate dash across the lunar surface. I paused before going into the later parts of the story about my transformation, about the moon men and the collective consciousness, about the destruction of Earth and the cosmic network. "Continue," Hammond said, gently urging me. "I need to hear everything." And so I told the rest. I told him about how I became part of the black matter, about how I became the recorder, about how I witnessed the end of humanity. I told him about the masters from the heat death of the universe, about the keepers and the intervening dimension, about how I reversed the process and imprisoned the masters again. I told him about how I died, or thought I had died, and then woke up here at the Johnson Medical Facility. Throughout the story, Hammond took no notes. He just watched me with an unreadable expression. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. "Do you believe all of that actually happened?" He finally asked, his voice non-judgmental. "I don't know what to believe anymore," I admitted. It felt real. Every detail, every emotion, every moment of horror, it all felt completely real. But how could it be real if Earth was destroyed? If I became part of the moon men, then how can I be here, human again? Hammond stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the blue sky. "There's a theory," he began, "that the human mind, when faced with extreme trauma, sometimes creates intricate, detailed alternate realities, not simple hallucinations or delusions, but complete imagined universes where it can process incomprehensible experiences." He turned back to me. "According to our records, you experienced a severe incident on the moon. A spacewalk incident that killed the other 5 members of your team and left you in a coma. Perhaps this is how your mind is processing that trauma. But the rules list," I protested, pointing to his briefcase. "It was real, I didn't imagine it." Hammond opened the briefcase again, took out the folder, and handed it to me. "Read it," he said. "Read it carefully." I flipped through the pages, reading each rule. They were exactly as I remembered them, specific, strange, terrifying. But as I reached the end, I saw a section I had overlooked before. Artemis, Mission 10, Survival Rules, Emergency Simulation Exercise 47 Bravo. Note: this document is part of an emergency simulation exercise. It is designed to test astronaut psychological responses under conditions of extreme isolation and stress. No actual threat exists on the moon as described in these rules. Crew members are required to monitor their reactions to this document as part of a pre-mission mental health assessment. I stared at the words, feeling the foundation of my reality shake again. "An exercise?" I asked, my voice weak. "It was all just a psychological test." "Artemis Mission 10 was a challenging mission," Hammond said softly. 6 months on the moon, further from Earth than any previous crew. NASA needed to know that their astronauts could withstand the psychological pressure. Tests like this are designed to assess your response capability under extreme stress. I shook my head, still disbelieving. but we didn't know it was a test. Dr. Piersor Zhang and my memory gave them to us as if they were real. And then on the moon, everything on the list happened. The blue light, the knocking on the module, the disappearing teammates. Hammond sat back down, his expression becoming more serious. Lieutenant Reed, I'm going to be frank with you. We're not entirely sure exactly what happened to Artemis Mission 10. After a successful landing at the moon's south pole, we lost contact with the Hyperion module for approximately 72 hours. When we re-established contact, only you responded, and you were in an extremely disoriented state, speaking incoherently about blue lights and black matter. He pulled a USB device from his briefcase and handed it to me. This is your final audio recording before the rescue ship arrived. You might want to listen to it. I looked at the USB stick, not daring to take it. What did I say? Listen and see for yourself, Hammond replied, placing it on the bedside table. When you feel ready. He stood up, closing the briefcase. One more thing, Lieutenant Reed. When the rescue ship found you, you were alone in the module. No sign of the other astronauts, no signs of a struggle, no blood, no evidence that anything violent had occurred. Only 5 empty spacesuits neatly folded in the storage compartment. And you, alone, huddled in the corner of the command room, muttering repeatedly about the moon men. He looked at me with an almost pitying expression. We'll talk again after you've heard the recording. Get some rest, Lieutenant. And with that, he left, leaving me alone with the USB stick and my tumultuous thoughts. It took me another 2 days before I was brave enough to plug the USB stick into the computer they had provided me. 2 days I spent immersed in doubt and fear, wondering what was real and what wasn't. 2 days where every time I closed my eyes, I still saw the blue light from the darkness, still heard the faint whispers of the keepers. Finally, I couldn't postpone it any longer. I plugged in the USB, opened the single folder on it. Artemis, Mission 10, Final Transmission MP3. I pressed play, and after a brief silence, I heard my own voice emanating from the speakers, hoarse and sobbing. Houston, if you can hear me, I'm Lieutenant Alexander Reed, Artemis Mission 10. I'm the only one left. They took everyone. The moon men took everyone. My voice broke in tears. Hearing it made me tremble. We broke the rules, all the rules. We looked at the blue light. We opened the door when there was knocking. We didn't maintain communication. Everything on the list, every bad thing on the list happened. A pause, then a gasp. Chen took me to the spire. He said he'd been there before. Artemis, Mission 5, not in the records, he was infected, brought the moon men back to Earth like a Trojan horse. My voice grew more frantic, almost manic. You don't understand, they came from the future, from the heat death of the universe. They created a loop. The spire was a prison. We opened the prison door. We let them out. Sobs, tearing sounds, violent thumps. I killed them. I killed all of them. I had to kill them when they started to transform. When they were no longer human, I used the weapon, the high-frequency gun. Chen gave me the gun. I gathered the bodies. Then I burned them, couldn't let Earth know. A choked laugh mixed with tears. But now they're coming for me. I can hear them, whispering in my mind. They want me to look at the light, want me to become like them, want me to record, recorder, become the recorder. A loud thump, as if I had swung my arm and hit something. Don't look at the light. Don't open the door when there's knocking. Follow the rules, all the rules. And then silence. For many long minutes, there was only the sound of shallow, solitary breathing, occasionally interspersed with faint sobs. Finally, my voice returned, now just a tired whisper. I will record. I will tell the story so that those who come after know, so that everyone knows. Follow the rules. Never look at the blue light. Never open the door when there's knocking. I am the recorder. I am the sole survivor from the moon. The recording ended. I sat there, feeling nauseous and dizzy. It was my voice, my words. But the story was different, not a cosmic connection to a collective consciousness, not the destruction and recreation of reality, but a conventional human explosion of violence. I had said I killed my teammates, but I had no memory of killing anyone. In my memories, they mysteriously disappeared, turned into moon men. I never fired a weapon at them. I never burned their bodies. I brought my hands up to my face, feeling tears stream down. Was I an insane killer? A human who had lost his mind under the pressure of lunar isolation, imagining an entire complex story of moon men and masters to cover up his crimes. A knock on the door startled me. Dr. Hammond entered, his face grim. You've heard it, he said, not a question. I nodded, unable to speak. Hammond sat down. Lieutenant Reed, I need you to understand a few things. First, there's no evidence that you killed anyone. When the rescue ship arrived, they found no bodies, no blood, no signs of violence. Your remaining team members simply weren't there. He leaned forward. Second, and perhaps more importantly, that recording was made after 3 days of you being alone in the Hyperion module. No food, barely any water, and in an extremely disoriented mental state. Doctors believe you experienced a form of psychosis brought on by extreme isolation and the trauma of witnessing. Whatever happened to your teammates? What did happen to them? I asked softly. If I didn't kill them, then where did they go? Hammond was silent for a long moment. That's what we're hoping you can help us understand, but we do have some theories. He pulled a photograph from his briefcase and placed it before me. It was an image from an external camera on the Hyperion module, showing the lunar surface near the landing site. Notice anything unusual about this photo? He asked. I looked carefully. At first, I saw nothing out of the ordinary, just typical lunar surface, full of regolith dust and rocks. But then I realized. Regolith dust was usually pale gray. In this photo, it was darker, almost black. The dust, I said. It's too dark, Hammond nodded. Precisely. Samples brought back from the Hyperion module show that the regolith dust at the Artemis Mission 10 landing site has an unusual composition. It contains complex carbon molecules we've never seen before on the moon. These molecules appear to have the ability to reorganize themselves in strange ways under laboratory conditions. He took out another photo. This time it showed a crater on the lunar surface, about 1 kilometer from the module. And this is what one of the module's external cameras captured on your first night there. This is the only photo. The camera went offline immediately after. I looked at the photo and felt every hair on my body stand on end. From the crater, a faint blue light was emanating, weak, almost imperceptible, but clearly present. Blue light, I whispered. Yes, Hammond said, a phenomenon we cannot yet explain. There is no natural light source on the moon that produces such light. No known chemical reaction between lunar minerals could create it. He collected the photos and looked directly into my eyes. Lieutenant Reed, I cannot confirm your story about the Moon Men and the Masters and the Black Spire. I cannot confirm that you became part of a cosmic collective consciousness. All of that could be the artifact of a damaged mind, trying to make sense of incomprehensible events. He paused. But I also cannot disprove it. There are too many unexplainable things about Artemis, Mission 10, too many Mysteries 5 missing astronauts without a trace, unusual regolith dust, an unexplainable blue light, and some other things I'm not at liberty to discuss with you. I felt a faint spark of hope ignite. So you believe me? I believe that you believe what you experienced, Hammond said carefully. And I believe that something happened on the moon, something beyond our current understanding. But when faced with unexplainable phenomena, the human mind often creates explanations that fit its previous experiences and cultural background. He stood up. You'll be discharged next week. You'll be transferred to a special facility for continued recovery and psychological assessment. And you'll be asked not to discuss Artemis Mission 10 with anyone outside my special security team. So you're saying I'm going to be detained? I said, feeling anger rise. Kept in silence? No, Lieutenant, Hammond said. I'm saying you'll be protected, and others will be protected from whatever may have happened to your teammates. He opened the door to leave but stopped and looked back at me one last time. One last thing, Lieutenant Reed. That rules list, the emergency simulation exercise. It was based on an older document found in a cave in the Altai region of Mongolia in the 1920s. The original document was written in a language no one recognized, but it contained symbols similar to the ones you described seeing on the spire. He smiled faintly. And on that document, the opening words, translated after decades of effort, were, "Lest those who come after know, lest those who seek the stars know, obey the rules, do not open the prison door." And with that, he left, leaving me alone with my chaotic mind and a haunting question: what really happened on the moon? On my last night at the hospital, I dreamed. In the dream, I was standing on the lunar surface, looking out at the black sky and the distant, verdant earth. No moon men, no black spire, no portals to other realities, just the pristine silence and beauty of the universe. But then I felt a presence behind me. I turned and saw a shimmering figure. Not someone in a spacesuit, but something almost transparent, like a ghost. At first, I didn't recognize it, but as it came closer, I realized it was me. Alexander Reed, but not human. Alexander Reed of the Moon Men, made of black matter with glowing blue eyes. "You didn't imagine me," it said, its voice resonating in my mind, not in the soundless lunar air. "You didn't imagine any of it." "Who are you?" I asked, frightened but also curious. What are you? I am you, it replied. From another timeline, from a reality where the loop played out, where the moon men won, then were defeated. But how? I asked. How can you be here if that happened in another timeline? Because when I broke the loop, I didn't die, it explained. I was separated. A part of me dissolved, a part returned to you, but a part still existed in the intervening dimension, the intersection between realities, and from there, I could see all versions. It moved closer, its blue eyes staring deep into mine with a non-human understanding gaze. In this reality, the loop was prevented early, it said. Something happened differently. A small decision, a moment of clumsiness, your teammates still vanished. The moon men still found them. But the portal was never fully opened. The masters are still imprisoned. But I didn't kill them, I asked, desperate to know the truth. My other self shook its head. No, you didn't kill. They were taken, assimilated. But the sounds of the moon men on the comms, the isolation, the fear, all of that led you to imagine that you did. Your mind created an explanation it could understand for incomprehensible actions. And now what? I asked. Are the moon men still there on the moon? Yes, it confirmed. In a dormant state, waiting, the black dust and the blue light. The prison is still closed, but its skin has weakened after millions of years. The rules are still important. Always important. So Hammond was right, I sighed. About the rules list, about the keepers, it was all real. Not all of it, my other self said. In your reality, the loop is not yet complete. There is no cosmic network yet, no omega phase, but the danger still exists. The seeds have been sown, the rules are still necessary. It began to fade, dissolving back into the darkness of the lunar surface. Remember, Alexander Reed? Record. Tell the story so that those who come after know. Obey the rules, never look at the blue light, never open the door when there's knocking, never open the prison door. As it vanished completely, its final words echoed in my mind. You are still the recorder, no matter the timeline. I woke up in the darkness, my heart pounding, knowing that it wasn't just a dream. It was a message, a warning from beyond the intervening dimension, and I knew that I had to obey it. I had to record. I had to tell the story. I, Alexander Reed, astronaut recorder, the sole survivor from the moon. The end. It has been 3 years since I woke up at the Johnson Medical Center. 3 years since I faced the question of which reality was real. My experience with the moon men and the masters, or the simpler explanation of a traumatic incident on the moon and a damaged mind trying to comprehend it. Dr. Hammond kept his word. I was transferred to a recovery facility, in fact, a high-security complex hidden deep in the Colorado forest. There I was monitored, studied, questioned endlessly. Not by psychiatrists, but by scientists and security personnel, all wearing unmarked agency badges and asking questions that went far beyond the scope of mental health. They wanted to know every detail of my experience. They wanted me to redraw the black spire, to describe its symbols precisely. They wanted me to recount the rules list, word for word. They wanted me to describe what it felt like to become part of the moon men, to connect with the collective consciousness. I often wondered if they believed me. Did they truly think I had experienced another reality, or were they just learning the intricacies of my complex delusion? But after a year, I started to see signed special containers brought in, hermetically sealed, transported by people in hazmat suits. Computer screens displayed images of the lunar surface, focusing on areas around where Artemis, Mission 10, had landed, marked with names like Dead Zone and Zone 0. And occasionally, in conversations they thought I couldn't hear, I caught phrases like regolith analysis continues to show self-organizing activity and blue light signals still intermittent. Believe it or not, they were investigating. And so was I had a lot of time, too much time, to think, to remember, to wonder. I reassembled every fragment of memory, assessing its plausibility, looking for inconsistencies or unverifiable details. In my second year, they gave me limited access to the internet, closely monitored, of course. I started searching for anything I could find about my theories. Self-organizing regolith dust, suspected ancient structures on the moon. Strange light phenomena observed by astronauts and observers. I found some things-obscure scientific papers about unusual regolith samples. Reports by amateur observers of fleeting lights on the lunar surface. Even rumors of objects seen by Russian and Chinese astronauts on their most recent missions. But nothing conclusive, nothing that could prove or disprove my experience. At the end of my second year, a special visitor came to see me. An elderly woman, perhaps in her 80s, brought in a government car and treated with utmost respect by the security personnel. She was led to my room, where we were left in private, something that had never happened before. "Mr. Reed," she said, her voice hoarse with a slight Eastern European accent, "I have read much about you. I have tried to convince them to allow me to meet you for 2 years." "Who are you?" I asked. "My name is Irina Petrov," she said, "but that probably means nothing to you. More important is who my father was. His name was Viktor Petrov, and he was part of the Luna 9 mission in 1966. "Luna 9, I said, frowning. "The first successful robotic landing on the moon. There were no astronauts on Luna 9. It was an unmanned probe." She smiled sadly. "That is what they wanted the world to believe. When the Soviet Union still existed, many secrets were kept. Now most have been revealed, but some are still buried. Luna 9 did have an astronaut on board, my father, a one-way mission. He knew he would never return." I remained silent, stunned by this information. "My father was sent for a special reason," she continued. "Not to get there before the Americans, but to investigate a phenomenon that previous unmanned missions had detected. A strange radio signal emanating from a specific area on the moon, the area that NASA now calls the Black Zone." My heart began to pound faster. "You know about the Black Zone?" "I know that is where my father died," she said simply. "And I know that before he died, he sent a message back to Earth. A message that the KGB kept hidden for decades until I found it in declassified archives in the 1990s. She opened her purse and took out a small piece of paper, yellowed and worn. "This is a copy of his last message. I think you should read it." I took the paper with trembling hands. It was written in Russian with an English translation below. "Landing module breached, pressure falling, insufficient oxygen. But it does not matter, I have seen it. The black structure. The spire, not human-made, too ancient. The glowing symbols, they are whispering in my mind. They say they have been here for so long. They say they will come again. Whoever reads this, obey the rules. Do not look at the blue light. Do not open the door when there is knocking. Do not open the prison door. For the sake of humanity, never return to the Black Zone." The message ended abruptly. I looked up, feeling a cold dread. "Your father saw the spire," I whispered. "He saw the moon men." "I do not know what he saw," Irina said. "But when I read about your experience in the files a friend at NASA showed me, I knew I had to meet you. I had to ask what you experienced. These creatures, these moon men, did they harm my father?" I looked into her old, tearful eyes, and I didn't know what to say. The truth, what I believed to be the truth or a merciful lie? "I think he died quickly," I finally said. "I think he didn't suffer." She nodded, wiping a tear. "Thank you, that is what I always hoped. And now I have something for you." She reached into her pocket and took out a small object. A stone, the size of my fist, black as coal. "This is the only thing that was returned from Luna 9. The KGB kept it, studied it for decades with no results. After the fall of the Soviet Union, it lay in a forgotten archive. I found it with my father's message." She placed the stone in my hand. "I think you should keep it. Perhaps it will help you understand what happened." As I touched the stone, I felt a strange sensation, not normal tactile, but a kind of deep vibration within my mind. And for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a tiny blue light flash from within it. The stone from the Black Zone, a piece of the moon men, a piece of the prison from the future. "No one believed me," Irina said softly, interrupting my thoughts. "No one believed my father's message. They said it was hallucinations from lack of oxygen or KGB propaganda or the letter of a dying man who wanted to be remembered. But you believe, don't you? You were there, you saw the spire." "Yes," I said, still staring at the stone. "I saw it. And you're right, I believe your father." She stood up, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Thank you, Lieutenant Reed. Thank you for telling your story. Thank you for helping me understand my father's story. And now I think my work here is done." She walked to the door but stopped and turned back. "You know, there was one rule my father did not include in his final message, a rule he wrote in his personal journal, found years later." "What rule?" I asked. "The final rule," she said, her voice becoming stronger. "Tell the story. Record it so that those who come after know, so that the loop can be broken." She smiled at me one last time. "My father was the first recorder, Lieutenant Reed. Now it's your turn." And with that, she left, leaving me alone with the black stone and my chaotic thoughts. After Irina left, everything began to change. Within a week, I was informed that I would be transferred to another facility, a safer facility. "We believe you're in danger, Lieutenant Reed," Dr. Hammond said. "Supervising the packing of my belongings there wasn't much. We've detected anomalies in your medical records in recent months." "What anomalies?" I asked. Hammond looked around as if to ensure we weren't being overheard, then lowered his voice. Radiation. Strange levels of radiation in your tissues, not the kind of radiation we've seen before, and it's increasing. I thought of the black stone Irina had given me, now hidden in my pocket. I hadn't told anyone about it. Is that why I have nightmares? I asked. Why I still see the blue light every time I close my eyes? Hammond looked at me sharply. You still see the light? You haven't mentioned that in recent assessments. I stopped mentioning many things, I admitted, when mentioning them yielded no results. Hammond sighed, seemingly coming to a decision. Reed, there are things happening that I can't tell you. Projects my agency is working on, related to the findings on the moon, projects that, if I'm honest, deeply worry me. He leaned closer. There have been 3 secret unmanned missions to the Black Zone since Artemis Mission 10. None of the vessels returned. They vanished from radar, lost communication, and simply disappeared. But they keep sending them, I said, feeling anger rise, despite the rules, despite the warnings. Science demands risk, Hammond said, but his voice lacked conviction. And not everyone believes those rules are valid. But you believe, I said. It wasn't a question. Hammond didn't answer directly. Instead, he took a folder from his briefcase and placed it on the table. This is your transfer order. You'll be taken to a facility in Alaska, isolated, secure, and better equipped to study your condition. I looked down at the document, feeling a cold dread run down my spine. It wasn't a transfer order, it was an indefinite detention order. A bureaucratic black hole from which I would never escape. I have no choice in this, do I? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I'm sorry, Reed, Hammond said, and he seemed to genuinely feel it. This is for your safety, and perhaps for the safety of others. In that moment, I looked into Hammond's eyes and saw that he knew. He believed. He believed in the moon men, in the masters, in the black spire and the prison from the future. And he was afraid. I never reached Alaska. During the flight, a small military plane with just me, 2 guards, and the pilot, something happened. An incident that even now I'm not sure if it was real or just another dream, another illusion, another reality superimposed on this one. We were flying over the Canadian wilderness when the lights in the cabin flickered and went out. The guards immediately became alert, checking their comms, checking their weapons. What was that? I asked. Just a circuit breaker, right? They didn't answer, but the worry on their faces spoke volumes. One of them went towards the cockpit to check on the pilot, and then I saw a small blue light emanating from my pocket, from the black stone. In a moment of fear and curiosity, I took it out. The stone had changed. It was no longer black, but glowing from within with an intense blue light, and its surface was moving, transforming, just like the black substance of the moon men. The remaining guard looked at me with horror. What is that? What are you holding? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because in that moment, I heard a voice in my head. Not the faint whisper of the keepers, not the haunting voice of a master, but a familiar voice, my own voice from beyond reality. Now is the time, Alexander Reed. Time to leave. Time to tell the story. A door is opening, a chance, take it. The stone in my hand vibrated, the blue light becoming brighter, more intense. The guard drew his weapon, shouting something I didn't hear. And then everything went white. I woke up in the forest, alone. No sign of the plane, the guards, or any civilization, only trees surrounding me and the blue sky above. The black stone lay beside me, once again inert and silent, but now it was no longer a single solid mass. It had fractured, revealing inside a faintly glowing core with blue veins running through it. You are free, my voice resonated in my head one last time. Tell the story so that those who come after know. I stood up, bruised and bewildered, but alive, free. And with a new purpose, I walked for 3 days until I found a road, 4 more days until I found a small town. I didn't give my real name, didn't use credit cards, left no trace. I knew they would be looking for me. I knew they would want to find me to keep me silent. For months, I moved from town to town, leaving minimal traces. And I began to write. Not official records on a computer that NASA could track, but by hand in notebooks on loose papers. Writing my story, the story of the moon men, the story of the masters and the keepers, the story of the black spire and the prison from the future. The story you have just read. And finally, when the story was complete, I found a way to share it with the world. Not under my real name, not in a way they could find me, but in a way that those who needed to know would find it. Those who would listen, those who might believe. I don't expect everyone to believe. I don't expect the world to change overnight. I only hope that by telling this story, I can plant a seed of doubt, a seed of vigilance, a seed of understanding. Lest those who come after know, lest those who seek the stars know, so that the loop can be broken. Obey the rules, don't look at the blue light. Don't open the door when there's knocking. Don't open the prison door. I am writing these last lines from a place I hope they won't find. I don't know if those who have read me will believe me. I don't know if my purpose will be fulfilled. I don't even know if I myself fully believe my story, those memories, those realities. Sometimes, in moments of weakness, I wonder if Hammond was right. Was it all just the complex delusion of a damaged mind trying to comprehend incomprehensible experiences? Did the moon men and the masters and the keepers truly exist, or were they just symbols I created to represent more fundamental human fears? The fear of death, of loneliness, of meaninglessness. But then I look out the window at night and see the moon hanging in the sky, and I remember the feeling of standing on its gray surface. I remember the blue light from the crater. I remember the knocking on the Hyperion module. And I know what I saw, I know what I experienced, I know what awaits us if we do not learn from the past. So, I leave these records for anyone who finds them. I leave my story, my warning. I fulfill my duty as the recorder. And on those nights when I can't sleep, when I feel the weight of the fractured black stone in my pocket, when I still see the blue light every time I close my eyes, I wonder how many Alexander Reeds are out there, in how many timelines, how many realities, writing this same story. How many are trying to break the loop, and will any of us ever succeed? Editor's note: the above manuscript was found in a waterproof bag buried at the base of a fake pine tree in a remote forest in northern Maine. There was no sign of the author, no evidence of a Lieutenant Alexander Reed in any public NASA documents, no record of a mission named Artemis, Mission 10, no evidence of a Russian cosmonaut named Viktor Petrov on Luna 9. However, on the day we received this manuscript, a strange phenomenon was recorded by amateur astronomers around the world. A brief, fleeting blue light, flashing on the lunar surface in an area at the South Pole that official NASA maps simply label unexplored.